Chapter 1 Caught in the Net. In the remote mountains and valleys, Nangxing lay on the lush branches with his eyes closed, sunbathing lazily. A tight leather suit outlines her sexy and hot figure. The marten boots under her feet are rhythmically ticking the trunk, and the whole body is still immersed in the heavy metal music of last night's disco. The revelry all night, at the cost of the sudden beating of the left eyelid all morning. The left eye jumped, and good luck came. The handsome man didn't leave in bed. He had 8-pack abs, mermaid lines, and his face was not sticky. She muttered to herself, wandering in the longing of good luck, and suddenly a dangerous breath enveloped down. Nangxing suddenly opened his eyes, put away his lazy posture in seconds, and disdained to stare at the giant net falling above. She suddenly got up and jumped on another thick tree trunk like lightning before the net fell. But ignore the darts shot from the other direction. Her spine stiffened, and the moment the pain spread, the strength of her whole body disappeared. His legs were weak, and he fell down a 100-meter tall tree. The petite figure fell rapidly and fell accurately into the net pocket. Dozens of tall and powerful bodyguards came out of the grass and surrounded the women in the net. Nangxing fell dizzy, but in 2 or 3 seconds, he stabilized the domineering Queen Fan. "Brothers, where is the mermaid?" Her voice is sweet and delicate, but there is an unruly rampant. The bodyguards looked at each other, and none of them dared to answer the word. Nangxing smiled sarcastically and slowly and charmingly pulled his messy long hair back. The little hand went back and down until it touched the dart on the left shoulder blade. Nangxing clenched his fingers, took a deep breath quietly, and pulled out the darts inlaid into the bone quickly and accurately. During the whole process, the eyes were full of contempt. "Be gentle with girls. Remember to use pink darts and pink nets next time." She blinked her eyes jokingly, took a sexy pose, and fainted. Opening her eyes again, Nangxing had a splitting headache, and her blurred vision made her unable to see the environment. "I only saw a pair of shiny leather shoes approaching her step by step. Are you awake?" The man's clear voice seemed to fall to the ground, without any tone, but full of oppression. Nangxing moved her arm and found that she was tied to the cross and had no strength all over her body. She couldn't even raise her head. She could only see the man's leather shoes and trousers. "It's spotless and worth a lot." She sneered and swallowed foam to moisten her throat. "Say it, what grudge, what resentment?" Obviously, she is a prisoner, but she is arrogant in word. The man's eyes are slightly deep, and the woman's familiar arrogant posture, even if he doesn't look at his face and turns into ashes, he recognizes it. 618. His tone is calculated. Peaceful, such a light code-like number made Nangxing's heart tremble, and the blood of his whole body rushed to his head. For Jingmo. 3 years ago, she drugged the man in room 618. Shock and panic were only for a short moment, and Nangxing soon calmed down. 618, so familiar and sensitive. She frowned and muttered, thought for a few seconds, and suddenly realized, oh, and her eyes lit up. 618. Online shopping carnival. Nangxing was excited to popularize the science, with a trace of contempt and sarcasm in his tone. "What's wrong? Do you want me to teach you how to save money by grabbing coupons, or do you want to empty the shopping cart for me? Please take care of the newcomers, please collect more to Chapter 2 Strong Interest in Men." Nangxing is crazy and arrogant, but she knows better how to judge the situation and improvise. When she fell into Fu Jima's hands, she had to pretend to be stupid and refuse to admit it. The man was not annoyed either. He sneered at the corners of his lips and watched her finish the performance patiently, and then he hit the nail on the head. "Say, who is behind you?" Nangxing twisted his tight body and rubbed back as much as possible. He asked in a funny way, "Can't you see? Behind me is wooden stakes. I don't even know this thing. TSK, ignorant." As soon as the words fell, the small chin was suddenly grasped by 2 fingers. The man was so strong that he seemed to crush her bones. Nangxing, who was insensitive to pain, couldn't help but quietly inhale the cool air. The chin was pinched and lifted, and Nangxing's eyes were forced to move up. Fu Jingmo's ascetic iceberg face bumped into her eyes strangely and familiarly. The man's face has a clear outline, his sword eyebrows are like ink, and his dark pupils are as deep as an abyss. He can't see his deep emotions clearly, but he seems to be able to understand everything and look straight into people's hearts. The tall bridge of the nose, the thin lips, and the noble breath run through the whole body. Handsome, cold and ruthless. Nangxing pretended to be shocked by the man's beauty. He smiled before Fu Jingmo forced him to ask. His sweet dimples appeared slightly, and a pair of big eyes stared straight at him. "Hi, baby, your face grows on my heart, and I want to sleep with you." She is straightforward and charming, and does not hide her interest in the man in front of her. Trying to maintain the posture wave when she slept with Fu Jingmo 3 years ago. Fu Jingmo suddenly let go of his hand. The woman's appearance seemed to touch his reverse scales, and took a step back in disgust. He glared at her coldly, took out a square handkerchief from his trouser pocket with his big hand, and slowly wiped the finger he had just touched her. The slender fingers rubbed the soft cloth, and the blue veins on the back of the white hand appeared faintly. Each frame of action made the light in Nangxing's eyes brighter and brighter. "If you tell me the master behind the scenes, I will spare your life, otherwise." Fu Jingmo raised his eyebrows slightly, his handkerchief landed on the ground, and he stepped on his feet and crushed it with his toes. Nanxing licked his dry lips and couldn't bear to admire. Baby, you are so amazing. My heart is about to melt. You are so handsome when you threaten people. Come and kill me, quickly. The surrounding temperature suddenly dropped a few degrees. Fu Jingmo gritted his teeth and held back the impulse to shoot this woman down. After a cold glance at the woman, Fu Jingmo turned around and left. Nanxing was slightly surprised, and all the in his eyes faded away, and his cold and arrogant eyes stared at the door. What the hell? She hasn't got up yet, and he's leaving? There is fraud. Sure enough, Fu Jingmo came back soon, holding a roll of tape and a pair of bright scissors in his hand. I can't see any emotion on the cold face. The black suit pants wrap around the straight and slender long legs. The steps seem careless, but the aura is extremely strong. Nanxing ignored the scissors in Fu Jingmo's hand, and Qiubo's beautiful eyes looked at his cold and lustful face, full of affection. Baby, I knew you couldn't give up on me. Come on. Tear it up. The tape stuck to her lips, the glue was cut off, and her pair of dimples were also sealed together. Aha. Ahaha. If you make a little more noise, your tongue will be cut. Fu Jingmo warned, and the scissors in his hand suddenly stabbed the head of the Southern Star. Chapter 3 Memories of 3 years ago. Nanxing reflexively dodged. She turned her head and stuck the scissors firmly on the stake. Although she dodged, her delicate cheeks were hurt by the sharpness of the scissors, scratching a bloody mouth. The frozen and dead air. Nanxing's slanted half of his face was almost frozen by Fu Jingmo's vision. Give you one night to make a choice. Remember, your life and death are in your own hands. Nanxing squinted at Fu Jingmo's cold back and disappeared. Then the door was closed, and she heard the sound of chains being locked. Uncles. Pull out the scissors for your aunt before leaving. If you tilt your neck all night, you will fall into the pillow. Under the dark moonlight, the noble and handsome man stood with his hands down. His face was as clear as a sculpture, his thin lips were slightly pursed, and his whole body exuded the lonely breath of rejecting people thousands of miles away. A man in black was half kneeling behind him, and his respectful posture was as if he had just finished the report. The cold sweat oozing from the forehead is obviously incompetent. I also asked Master Fu to punish him. Fu Jingmo turned a deaf eye and looked down at the cliff under his feet. With the bright moonlight, he saw the white fog and the dangerous jakey ravines under the abyss. Mysterious and beautiful, but if you lose your footing, you will be crushed. He opened his lips coldly. You caught her this time. The merit is greater than the excess. Retreat. The heart of the man in black hanging to his throat was put back into his stomach. The taciturn Master Fu has always been clear about rewards and punishments, which is also one of the reasons why he vowed to follow Fu Jingmo to the death. He stood up from the ground and looked at Fu Jingmo's lonely back. He still couldn't help talking too much. Master Fu, it's late at night, and it's cold in the mountains. Go back to your room early to rest. Fu Jingmo was deaf. The man in black sighed in his heart. No matter how worried he was, he could only be ordered to retreat. I don't know how long it took. The white fog under the cliff abyss surged up, and everything in the world seemed to be shrouded in fog. Fu Jingmo then turned back to the bedroom and locked the door of the balcony. Brother, is your bed big? Are you afraid to sleep alone? Fu Jingmo, who had just taken out his room card, was approached by a little girl who suddenly appeared behind him. The explicit and frivolous words are the crisp little milk sound. His eyes are cold. No need. When the words fell, he pushed the door in. But what stepped into the room faster than him was a slender figure, with agility like a jumping cat. When he realized, the girl was already lying on her side on the big bed, supporting the back of her head with one hand, and posing in a sexy pose. Autumn waves flowed in the girl's clear eyes, and her tender skin seemed to be able to pinch out water. Her red lips were shining with shiny water, and her eyebrows were picturesque. It is obviously a green student's appearance, but it has a touching charm. Get out of here. Fu Jingmo expelled with a stern voice, and his face was as cold as a cold pool in winter. The girl's delicate red lips rose, and the dimples on her cheeks appeared deeply. In an instant, the crystal chandelier above her head was eclipsed. It's so fierce and rude, but I like it. Fu Jingmo frowned, without the current enthusiasm of beauty. He looked at the pure and charming beauty on the bed, as if he was looking at a pool of dirty garbage. He didn't want to touch this kind of pheasant, so he directly called the hotel manager to call the security guard. The girl's soft body wrapped one hand around the man's neck, and the other hand easily dropped his mobile phone. Don't call people. I'm homeless. Can you take me in for one night? Fu Jingmo smelled the refreshing fragrance on the girl's body, and the coldness in her black eyes gradually disintegrated and loosened. Delusion. He was about to push the girl away. The girl took the lead and hugged her tighter. Her red lips seemed to rub against his cold and thin lips. Fu Jingmo's eyes were a little gloomy. The tip of his nose became more and more fragrant, penetrating his internal organs like a poisonous demon and controlling his mind. The girl hooked her lips with satisfaction, her delicate lips came close to the man's ear, and asked again. Are you going to take me in now? Chapter 4 Bundle, It's Enjoyment. What answered her was the man's strong body, and his clothes fell to the ground. Ah! The handsome man suddenly woke up from his sleep. His whole body was hot, his breathing was heavy, and his chest, which was oozing thin sweat, was violently undulating. Fu Jingma's dark eyes stared at the ceiling, and his eyes were illusory. The woman's sweet and pure face was enlarged in front of his eyes, like a fox who harmed the country and the people, with a charming and debauchery in every smile. He relaxed for a long time before his mind was detached from the nightmare. Those chaotic and entangled pictures are like seaweed growing in the deep sea, deeply rooted in the hearts of men. That woman is the biggest stain and shame in his life. Fu Jingmo went to the bathroom to take a shower. When he came out of the bathroom, it was completely dawn. Fu Jingmo was wearing a dark blue handmade customized suit, and his sparse eyebrows always had the usual indifference and strong ascetic. Even if the handsome people and gods were angry, the maids in the villa did not dare to take a closer look. He sat down to eat, and Shu Tsuka, who was standing beside him, began the day's itinerary report. At 10 o'clock, the video conference of the multinational branch. At 12 o'clock, Mr. Zhang of Shengshu Group's dinner. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's all pushed. Fu Jingmo drank all the red wine in the glass. His thin lips were crimson with red wine. His dark and cold eyes stared at the small attic not far away, and the corners of his lips evoked a playful arc. The once-in-a-lifetime smile scared Shu Tsuka's spine cold. Mr. President, did something happy happen? Fu Jingmo gave Shu Tsuka a cold look. Back. In an understatement, Shu Tsuka has understood Fu Jingmo's central idea. He immediately put the document into his armpit and couldn't wait to slap his big mouth fiercely and recite it fluently with a smile. The report is concise. If you say something that has nothing to do with the work, you will be fined 1,000 yuan, and if you violate it again, you will be fired directly. Fu Jingmo took out a cigarette from the cigarette box, nodded slightly and stuffed it into his thin lips. He lit it, and his movements were skillful and smooth. He took a breath, and the white smoke spit out, and the handsome facial contours were more profound in the smoke. Count the number of words. Shu Tsuka counted the number of words silently, and suddenly his heart was cold, sparse, a whole 11 words. More than half a month's salary has been lost. Okay, President, I'm going to the finance department to get the penalty. Shu Tsuka held back the urge to howl and retreated quickly. Wait a minute. Fu Jingmo stopped him. Shu Tsuka was happy in his heart. Does Master Fu think of his good and want to open his face to him? Fu Jingmo indifferently ordered him to go back to the old house and pick up Tianchen. Shu Tsuka. Nanxing, who was frozen all night and hungry all night, saved his energy as much as possible and closed his eyes to nourish his mind. Hearing the sound of the door lock turning, her tightly closed eyes immediately opened, and she was so vigilant that even her hair was on guard. Fu Jingmo came in with a cigarette in his sip, his dark eyes narrowed slightly, and there was a little evil charm in his noble and elegant. Being tied by a rope. It should be enjoyable for you, right? He sneered and stopped when he was 2 steps away from Nanxing. Nanxing tilted his neck all night and was very unhappy in his heart. He cursed pervert in his heart, but he flashed electricity to Fu Jingmo, who was well dressed, and blinked ambiguously. Fu Jingmo bit the cigarette butt with his teeth, ignored the woman's wavy beautiful eyes, and raised his eyebrows gently. Have you thought about it? Nanxing nodded. The cigarette burning at his fingertips was thrown on the ground. Fu Jingmo stepped on the cigarette butt and strode to the woman. He raised his hand and hissed. The tape that had been stuck to the woman's mouth all night was torn off by the cruelty of the belt meat. Bean-sized blood overflowed along the broken lips. In just a few seconds, the flesh and blood were blurred, and the original outline of the lips could not be seen clearly. Ah! It hurts so much. Nanxing's dry throat overflowed, and the delicateness was far greater than the pain. This familiar cry of pain made Fu Jingmo's eyes gloomy, and a sweet nightmare flashed through his mind, and his big hand strangled the woman's slender neck fiercely. Chapter 5 I am an immoral scumbag. Say. Nanxing's delicate little face gradually turned into pain. Fu Jingmo was not soft at all, which made her breathless and almost suffocated. This man must be sick. She strangled her neck and said a fart. Ah. Nanxing's blood mouth was slightly open, and the sound was vague, as if his throat was blocked by a stream of blood, and his hands and feet were tied up and could not struggle. Fu Jingmo's cold eyes were dyed red by the blood on the woman's face. Looking at her seducing water eyes losing color and on the verge of death, he let go. The suffocated southern star suddenly loosened with the man. With the movement of her hand, the rapid air rushed into her lungs in an instant. She couldn't adapt to it, and her body coughed violently under the choked bow. The mucus coughed out was full of terrible blood. Say. This cold word fell on Nanxing's head again. She knew that Fu Jingmo hated her explicit frivolity, which was a lesson. Nanxing, who stopped coughing, slowly raised her head and looked at the evil and dangerous man. She sighed faintly. Okay, I'll be honest. You untie me first. Fu Jingmo's eyes were cold. You have no room for bargaining. Nanxing squeezed his bloody lips tightly, raised his eyes and looked straight into Fu Jingmo's eyes, which meant clearly, if you don't let go, I won't say anything. The eyes of the two people were fighting in the air, one was cold, and the other was stubborn and arrogant. The atmosphere is stiff. Just when Nanxing thought that Fu Jingmo would not compromise, he made a gesture, and a dark shadow suddenly came in, cutting the twine on Nanxing's wrist with 2 knives. He was so agile that Nanxing didn't even see his appearance clearly, and suddenly disappeared, coming and leaving without a trace. Nanxing's arms fell down heavily. This familiar weight. She was happy, and her eyes were dimly bright. Sure enough, she was not found out. Cough. Nanxing coughed lightly, brewing emotions, and the painting style suddenly changed. She entered the painful role of introspection in seconds, and her face was full of regret and guilt. First of all, let me introduce myself. I'm an immoral and unwilled scumbag. Although I don't remember you, looking at your hateful attitude towards me, you know that we must have had a relationship. You must be one of the victim crucian carp among the men like me crossing the river. I'm sorry, it was because I fell in love with you at first sight when I fell in love with you. Hormones made me lose my mind, so I reached out my poisonous hand to you. No one instructed me. It's all my fault. Whether to kill, or sleep back, please do as you like. When Nanxing talked about the emotional part, his shoulders shrugged slightly and pretended to sob. After saying that, he lowered his eyes, pretending to be slaughtered and disposed of. The man who crossed the river. Oh, you are really Haina Baichuan. Fu Jingmo sneered coldly, licking his back teeth with the tip of his tongue, and his white and slender fingers turned a lighter. He approached, and the cold lighter lifted Nanxing's chin heavily. He squinted and looked at the soft and delicate woman, as if he was thinking about the truth of her words. Well, it's quite suitable for your promiscuous soul. He sneered and said word by word that I didn't believe it. Nanxing. This person is really in debt. Fu Jingmo's eyes were sharp, and his words turned around. How important do you think a chess piece used as bait would be? Nanxing's breathing was stagnant. A tearing pain appeared in a corner of his heart, and his slender and thick eyelashes trembled slightly. She knew that Fu Jingmo did not kill her in order to lead out the mastermind behind the scenes. Chapter 6. Find a pet to play with. If someone comes to save you, then the dead couple, no one will come to save you. Fu Jingmo deliberately paused, as if he saw the fleeting vulnerability in the woman's eyes. He grabbed her pain point and deliberately bit the 2 words very hard. Discarded chess pieces, it's boring to live, right? With the man's sarcastic words, the lighter against Nanxing's chin suddenly pulled away, and her face was thrown to the side. The door is locked and the circulating air is cut off. Nanxing spat out a mouthful of blood and despised the unruly, as if her vulnerability just now was the illusion of deliberately given to Fu Jingmo. He put his hand on his stiff and numb neck and slowly turned it twice. Nanxing frowned and gritted his teeth. While scolding Fu Jingmo's ancestors in his heart, he broke his hand hard and returned the crooked neck of the pillow back to its original position. What's wrong? Nanxing cursed in pain. Swear words, wipe off the cold sweat oozing from his head, leaned against the wall with his weak body, and looked up at the dim room. There is a small window near the roof, which has accumulated a lot of thick dust, spider webs are everywhere, and the seams are tightly closed. The wall was measured to be 4 or 5 meters high. When she recovered her strength, she rushed up with an arrow step. Fu Jingmo, when I recover, let's see how I play with you. Nanxing swore secretly, pulled open the invisible zipper on his waist, reached into the compartment in the leather coat, and took out a bag of wet wipes. 2 pieces, light and small, can't be seen at all when put on the waist. One wipes the blood on the mouth and one wipes the hands. After cleaning up, Nanxing glanced at the door and leaned against the wall to the farthest corner from the door. She lifted her long hair on her cheeks, revealing the diamond earrings on her snow-white earlobes. The style is the most ordinary and inconspicuous round broken diamond, but the structure is unique. She held the earpin behind her thumb and sent the message with the slightest voice. Pickled cabbage, I was caught by my enemy. For about 2 or 3 minutes, the man's magnetic and excited voice came from my ear. Damn it. Congratulations. What are you? Nanxing closed his eyes and took a deep breath to calm himself down. I'm not kidding. The opponent is too insidious and cunning. Don't come to save me. Master, you help me. The man named Pickled K heard Nanxing's seriousness and was instantly angry. Did you carry me out of the mountain to dance to eat hot pot again? Nanxing. Indeed, Fu Jingmo can find out her trace, which is related to her frequent entry and exit of City A during this period. Cough. Nanxing coughed lightly and touched the tip of his nose with a smile. Don't blame me. The leaflets of the opening of their bar have been scattered in front of the house. How can I not go to such a provocation? Listening to this righteous tone, the man held his forehead and squeezed out 2 words from between his teeth. You deserve it. Nanxing curled his lips and didn't take it seriously. Therefore, I can't live on my own fault. Don't check my location. I can't get out of it in 2 days and I will contact you again. You really don't need me to save you. The man became serious. He knew that Nanxing should be strong. Nanxing smiled and his tone was playful and light. No, I'm just bored. I want to find a pet to play with. The man hesitated for a few seconds, thinking of Nanxing's bad taste and the kung fu that was not inferior to him, and he relaxed again. All right, keep in touch. Nanxing hummed and took his hand away from the ear stud, and his ear instantly regained peace. Only then did she really breathe a sigh of relief. Fu Jingmo's heart is ruthless, deep and unpredictable, and there are many masters around him. He must have laid a net in heaven and earth, and he is determined to avenge 3 years ago. It's enough for her to fall into the net alone, and she won't let others get involved again. Chapter 7 Little Fan Tuanzi God assists. Gore gore gore. The shriveled stomach screamed, and the silky sadness that had just been dyed in Nanxing's heart dissipated in an instant. She sat cross-legged on the ground, put one hand into the loose puff sleeve, and groped for a ham sausage. Just about to take it out, I thought that the smell was too strong, and the hostages were too arrogant to eat this. It was like attracting bees and butterflies, and quickly stuffed it back. Biscuits, too dry. Beef jerky, it's hard to chew because of the mouth injury. Finally, Nanxing groped for a long time and took out 2 honey-flavored chicken legs. She nibbled on the chicken legs happily and remembered her life motto: eat well and live for immortality. Does Fu Jimo calculate? The minister under the skirt. The generation of night. After eating and drinking enough, Nanxing put her hands around her chest and leaned on the cross to rest. She lived a rough life, but her body was delicate and could not stand a little cold. After sleeping on the damp and cold floor all night, Fu Jingmo didn't have to do anything. He drove to Hershey by himself. This is her fatal weakness. Only the master, uncle, and pickled cabbage know it. Late at night, when Nanxing was sleeping in a daze, the familiar sound of the iron chain opening the door made her grit her teeth and curse a psychopath. Humiliation tortures her day and night. Baby, I'm out of energy. I'll let you bully you again tomorrow. Please bear with it. Nanxing closed his eyes, and there was a trace of delicateness in his soft voice, which was quite like a desire to refuse and welcome. Beautiful sister, who locked you in the attic? A sweet and glutinous voice made Nanxing almost fall off the stake in shock. I only saw a pink doll standing at the door, with a small ponytail, round cheeks fluttering red, and big black and bright grape-like eyes, staring at her curiously. Nanxing was cute, glanced at the key in the little girl's hand, and squatted down and waved with a smile. Come here, little fan ball. Sister, there is candy here. Hearing the word candy, little pink ball immediately rushed over with a smile. Nanxing catched the little powder ball with both hands and keenly smelled a faint smell of traditional Chinese medicine on the little powder ball. She lowered her eyes and saw a small pink ball wearing a sachet around her neck. I know. My brother hid all the candy on you, so he locked you in the attic, right, beautiful sister? Brother. Nanxing was ashamed, this age gap. She thought she was Fu Jingmo's illegitimate daughter. Yes, the little powder ball is really smart. Nanxing pinched the smooth cheeks of the little pink ball in praise, followed her words and asked, so you are looking for candy, found this place? The little fan nodded and innocently showed off the process of her stealing the key and secretly hiding it and pretending not to see it, so that the big guy went to find her. Nanxing smiles with a few words of praise, her brain was running fast. She couldn't waste this opportunity to escape from the door. Beautiful sister, give me the candy quickly, and my brother will find it later. The little pink ball stretched out his chubby little hand and anxiously pulled Nanxing's sleeve. Okay, I'll give you candy, but you also need to help me with a little thing. Nanxing smiled mysteriously and coaxed. Seeing the little fan group hesitate, she directly used the killer to take out all the candy inventory on her body. A large handful of colorful fruit candies of various flavors, and the little powder ball's eyes were straight. There was no hesitation in an instant. Nanxing leaned close to the ear of the little pink ball, covered his mouth with his hand and whispered, "Do you remember?" The little pink ball looked at the candy and nodded. Got it, this is the secret between me and my beautiful sister. You are so good. Nanxing peeled a piece of sugar and stuffed it into the mouth of the little powder ball, and then stuffed the remaining sugar back into the sleeve. He patted the bulging puff sleeves and blinked at the satisfied little pink ball. After it's done, these are all yours. The ribbed little powder ball was eating candy and made an okay gesture. The beautiful sister asked her to help. She is super good at it. Fu Jingmo sent someone to search the whole villa, but he couldn't find the little girl. His cold eyebrows were stained with a trace of anxiety, and the breath around him was so horrible that it was creepy. Fu, Master Fu, the door of the small attic is open. Will the young lady be inside? Fu Jingmo rushed to the attic with great strode to find that the bodyguard had not finished reporting. Chapter 8 I am a magic doctor for free treatment. Nanxing heard the rapid footsteps and hurriedly hugged the little powder ball and shouted for help. Come on, this child is sick. Come on, it's time to die. Look at the pink and tender little pink ball. At this time, the little face is pale, her lips are purple, and she is panting, and she is about to roll her eyes and faint. Sweet. Fu Jingmo rushed over, snatched the little powder ball from Nanxing's hand, and ran downstairs without looking at her. Nanxing took the opportunity to follow and comforted himself crazily in a worried tone. She has asthma. I know medicine. I can cure asthma for free. Get out. Fu Jingmo gave a look. Several bodyguards went up and buckled Nanxing. Regardless of Nanxing's struggle and shouting, he dragged her back to the attic and locked the door. I fell to death. Nanxing stood up from the ground cursingly. Rubbing his painful buttocks, he walked to the side of the stake, turned his back to the door, and couldn't help laughing. TSK. That little fan group's acting skills are at the level of the movie queen. In the huge living room, Fu Tianchen, who was determined to eat candy, performed unprecedentedly severe asthma with her life. A trace of panic flashed in Fu Jingmo's eyes, but his hands were methodical. After shaking the medicine in the bottle vigorously, he skillfully connected the vaporizer to the storage tank. He put one hand around Fu Tianchen, leaned her head back as much as possible, carefully put the nozzle of the mist storage tank on her purple lips, and professionally sprayed asthma spray. Sweet, come and drink and spit it out. After inhaling once, Fu Jingmo took the water cup from the bodyguard and let Fu Tianchen, who had relieved his asthma symptoms, rinse his mouth. The drugs in aerosols generally have hormones. You should rinse your mouth in time after inhalation, otherwise it is easy to cause pharyngeal infection. Fu Tianchen shook her little head and refused to drink, and the tender little milk sound was full of crying. Brother, am I dying? Fu Jingmo, who has always been cold and rational, is not good at coaxing people. Even Fu Tianchen, who is pink and tender, can make people's hearts cute. He has no emotions. Nonsense, drink the water quickly. The beautiful sister in the attic said that she was a magic doctor and could cure me. I rinsed my mouth. Brother, can you ask her to treat me? Fu Jingmo's eyes were slightly deep, as if he understood something. He handed the water cup straight to Fu Tianche's mouth and said coldly that she was crazy and couldn't believe what she said. Fu Tianchen, who was rejected, curled her mouth, and her big eyes were instantly filled with crystal tears. The little hand pushed away the water cup in front of him, and the tears were broken into a thread. Brother is a bad guy. He wants Tianchen to die, but he doesn't want to save Tianchen at all. Fu Jingmo frowned, and his temples were stinged by the little girl's crying. He can't coax people, and his sister can't ignore it. He had no choice but to come down. Okay, rinse your mouth and go back to your room to rest. I'll ask her for a prescription. Fu Tianchen was very happy, and there were still crystal blisters on her nose. She hugged Fu Jingmo gratefully with her dog legs. Thank you, brother. I treat Tianchen the best. When Tianchen recovers and grows up, she will definitely be filial to me. I built a candy house and let my brother live in it. The beds, tables and chairs are all made of candy. When I'm hungry, I take a bite. Fu Jingmo interrupted indifferently. Tianchen, you talk too much. In the attic, Nanxing continued to sleep with his hands around his chest on the stake as if nothing had happened. With a loud noise, the door was violently kicked open. Chapter 9 Give you a chance to escape. Nanxing rubbed her ears calmly and didn't even lift her eyelids. She was so excited about the aggressiveness of the visitors. How lucky it is to see the glacial flames. What the hell are you doing? You don't let people sleep again and again. She opened her eyes impatiently. The moment she saw Fu Jingmo, she was very surprised. The irritation in her eyes all turned into bubbles of love, and her water eyes were as bright as stars. Baby, it's late at night. Are you here to cover people with quilts? Looking at the shy and pretending woman, Fu Jingmo's face became more and more gloomy. He stood at the door and didn't take a step into the house. Are you really good at treating asthma? Aha, Fu Jingmo frowned. Speak human language. Fu Jingmo turned around and left. Nanxing immediately took it when he saw it. He stretched out his hand and gently shouted, Baby, don't go. I'm the most obedient. I'll listen to you. Fu Jingmo's steps did not stop for a second. Nanxing followed in a hurry again. Seeing that the bodyguard did not stop her, she was overjoyed that the preliminary plan was successful. Baby, don't be angry. He just gave you a little pampering. If you don't like it, he can change it. I can be a soft girl or a hard girl. Anyway, I'm a super match for the baby. Fu Jingmo suddenly stopped, and Nanxing, who followed, suddenly hit his back. Hiss. Nanxing covered the painful bridge of his nose and frowned to inhale the cold air. Baby, you are so strong. It hurt so much to Fu Jingmo's big hand hanging on his side gradually tightened, turned sideways, and his black eyes glared at the delicate woman coldly. The bright moonlight sprinkled on him, and his cold and handsome facial features were tense, and there was a chill between his slightly cold eyebrows, which made people's spines tremble. This man's aura is really strong. Nanxing secretly said, and changed the topic with a smile. Does the child have congenital asthma or allergic asthma? Fu Jingmo sneered. Magic doctor, can't even see this. Nanxing. Just as she racked her brains to say some authoritative and professional medical words to take the title of magic doctor, Fu Jingmo suddenly raised his hand and made a gesture. Nanxing just felt that this gesture was very familiar, and a tall figure came out of the dark. Then her eyes went dark, and she was blindfolded, and 2 fibers the thin arms were rudely strewn back, and before the brain could react, the person had been tied up by the 5 flowers. The rough gun cocoon at the man's fingertips and the speed of the wind made Nanxing's mouth twitch slightly. This master should be Fu Jingmo's bodyguard, the kind who follows him around the clock. Baby, what are you doing? Aren't you going to see a child? It's not good. It's tied up and blindfolded. It's not good for children. Give you a chance to escape. Fu Jingmo opened his lips coldly, without a trace of emotional ups and downs, and knocked coldly on Nanxing's eardrums. If you win, cure Chen Chia's asthma, and the feud between us will be cancelled. Nanxing understood, but didn't figure it out. You're not afraid that I can't escape? Your sister's asthma. Oh. Hearing Fu Jingmo's sneer, Nanxing understood completely. How can you hide the little skill of carving insects from Fu Jingmo? The ancient European villa built on the cliff is as bright as daylight in the dark night. On the empty grassland of thousands of square meters, the whistling cold wind gathered from all directions and attacked the southern star standing in the center. Her slender arms were tied behind her, her palm-sized face was half covered by a blindfold, and her long seaweed-like hair was swept by the strong wind, floating out beautiful arcs. The familiar harsh environment and the smell of the soil forest shocked Naixin. Fu Jingmo actually lives on a cliff. She didn't have time to complain about Fu Jingmo's perversion. She was full of what Fu Jingmo was going to do to her. Chapter 10. Raise your middle finger, rogue whistle. Nanxing's energy has only recovered 1/3 of the previous strength, and the force is equivalent to waste. Strange footsteps approached, and the rough rope on the wrist was untied. Take off the blindfold. The bodyguard who untied the twine said this sentence and ran out of the golf course as if to escape. Nanxing was anxious, and the bodyguards hastily escaped, indicating that she was standing in a circle of terror and danger. Rubbing the fingers stiffened by the wind, Nanxing pulled off the rope on his body in a way that was wrapped in a circle, and then raised his hand and slowly took off the blindfold. Dare catching. Nanxing subconsciously raised his hand to block in front of him, blocking the uncomfortable light like the tip of a needle in the dark night. She raised her head slightly and narrowed her eyes, looking around through the gap between her fingers, and suddenly looked at a pair of cold eyes. Fu Jingmo stood on the viewing platform, with a natural momentum, cold eyebrows, and deep black eyes. He couldn't see the deep emotion. He looked down on her and straight. There was also a handsome man standing beside him, and his temperament was completely different from Fu Jingmo's. As if he noticed that Nanxing was looking at him, the man smiled brightly and played a hooligan whistle at Nanxing. Fu Jingmo raised his hand, and the huge thing released the iron cage. A tiger with orange, yellow, and black stripes rushed to the South Star like a wind. Damn it! The blood of Nanxing's whole body rushed to his head in an instant. Is this the escape from Fu Jingmo's mouth? She was shot down directly. Nanxing gritted his back teeth and looked at the observation deck. His eyes were full of disguised obsession, full of unrollness and contempt, and raised a big middle finger at Fu Jingmo. TSK, Lao Fu, this girl is wild enough. I like her. Young Kanzan squinted his affectionate and charming peach blossom eyes, rubbed his chin with slender fingers, and stared at the provocative woman with interest. In this case, instead of crying and begging for mercy, she is like a wild rose with thorns. The corners of Fu Jingmo's lips hooked an arc that seemed to be smiling but not smiling, and his magnetic voice was cold to the bone. If you like it, I'll leave a whole corpse for you later. The tiger stopped 3 or 4 meters away from the southern star, gritting its sharp teeth like a sharp knife, and the low roar was creepy. Nanxing, who lives in the deep mountains all year round, is not afraid of tigers. Her pet is a white tiger, accompanying her like a playmate, coexisting peacefully and having deep feelings. But the tiger in front of me has obviously just been captured by humans, and its wild animal nature has not faded. It is very depressing and aggressive, and its bright eyes are burning with ferocity. This is an adult tiger with hatred for human beings. Nanxing did not dare to act rashly, avoiding the tiger's eyes and staring at its sharp and strong front claws. The grass under the toe claws has been uprooted, and the black soil seems to be torn open by the flesh and blood exposed by the sebum. She has read books to avoid the attack of jackals, wolves, tigers, and leopards. Turning around and running away will only anger the tiger to eat her. She should calm down. No matter how afraid you are, you can't show a trace of timidity. Nanxing clenched the twine in her hand, and her soft palm was hurt by the rough twine. Between life and death, she was extremely calm and sober. This twine will be her only life-saving straw. There is a fartong tree dozens of meters behind her. As long as she approaches the tree before the tiger attacks her, she can take risks and let go. Young Kanzan seemed to see through Nanxing's idea. Out of pity for Jade, he was reluctant to bury such a beautiful woman in the mouth of a tiger. He put his hands to his mouth and shouted hoarsely, "Little Rose, run. If you win, I will chase you." The tiger was attracted by Yang Tansen's loud voice. The moment it looked back, Nanxing seized the opportunity and quickly tied a knot at the bottom of the rope. The rope was thrown and accurately wrapped the tiger's neck. Chapter 11. Fighting with Tigers. Nanxing clenched the twine with both hands and pulled it back with all his strength. His delicate and small facial features were wrinkled together, and his forehead, which was oozing with cold sweat, was covered with blue veins. The tiger was attacked, and the ferocious and bloodthirsty beastly nature was fully stimulated. He raised his head and crazily broke free from the rope around his neck. Every time the tiger struggled, Nanxing was pulled and fell to the ground. The adult tiger was several times her weight, and the difference in strength was too great. Before she could stand up, she was pulled and thrown up again, and then fell down fiercely. The palm of the hand was worn out, and the twine was dripping with blood. She is still holding the twine in her hands. Don't let go. She can live. Yang Kanzan was stunned by the shock of the scene in front of him. The woman's tough and tenacious vitality made his originally excited and playful heart stained with a thread of heavy worry. The petite woman was thrown back and forth in the air by the tiger, thrown 4 or 5 meters high each time, and then fell firmly. The woman's face was covered with blood, but her eyes were as bright as the stars, and she didn't let go. That's enough, Lao Fu, it's enough to scare her. Don't really risk your life. Yang Kanzan looked sideways at the indifferent Fu Jingmo and couldn't help begging for mercy for the woman. Fu Jin silently looking at the woman who was thrown like a rag, he couldn't find out the truth. For a long time, he hooked the corners of his lips, and the bottom of his eyes were cold. Do you think the tiger was strangled first, or did she fall to death first? Yang Kanzan was angry. He waited for a long time, thinking that Fu Jingmo would give him a little thin face, and it was enough to express his anger. Unexpectedly, there was a bet. Lao Fu, you are really cruel. Where is the gun? Anesthetic gun? Yang Kanzan's violent temper came up and roared at the bodyguard behind him. This young man can't be messed with either. The bodyguard looked at Fu Jingmo, who was not instructed, and was about to take out the anesthetic gun when Fu Jingmo said coldly, "Who dares to give it to him?" The bodyguard immediately hid the anesthetic gun tremblingly. Yang Kanzan gritted his teeth, poked the backless bodyguard with his fingers, stared at the cold-blooded and ruthless Fu Jingmo, and quickly rushed down the viewing platform. He looked for it by himself. Also Nangsing, who would never admit defeat in one breath, dragged the exhausted tiger under the far tall tree with his bare hands and fists. She wrapped the blood rope in her hand around the tree and made a firm dead knot. After subduing the beast, her tense nerves were broken with a snap. The numb senses also woke up at this moment, and the pain came overwhelmingly. She sat slumped on the grass, sweating profusely. She closed her eyes and leaned her head against the trunk, panting. The sweaty long hair was awkwardly attached to the cheek and neck, and red blood flowed down the corners of his mouth. Suddenly, a sharp light of a knife shot over. Nanxing suddenly opened his eyes and saw a dagger cut the rope that bound the tiger. Before Nanxing's brain could react, he had already run away reflexively. Fu Jingmo won't stop if he doesn't kill her. The tiger has regarded Nanxing as a strong enemy. His teeth roared, his toes and claws manically scraped the ground, the soil splashed, and the strong body rushed up like lightning. Nanxing's mind was full of running, and his feet stepped into the hole without paying attention. The moment her body fell uncontrollably, she saw Fu Jingmo smile on the observation deck. Obviously, the corners of his lips are smiling, but his whole body is full of a fierce feeling. He is high above, like a cold-blooded Satan. The weight of the tiger made Nanxing vomit a mouthful of blood. Before she could relax, the tiger's sharp teeth penetrated her shoulder blade. The unbearable pain made Nanxing's eyes black and faint. Chapter 12. Look, I survived. Nanxing, who lost too much blood and was seriously injured, woke up after a high fever and a coma for a day and a night. The left shoulder was seriously injured, and 26 stitches were stitched. Fu Jingmo intended to torture Nanxing. He only sent someone to treat Nanxing's wounds simply, and did not give her any anti-inflammatory and analgesic drugs. It is clear that the crime of death can be avoided, but the crime of living is inescapable. Nanxing was also a cruel character. The pain soaked the mattress with cold sweat, scratched the sheets, and did not lower his posture to ask the doctor for a painkiller. It was dawn, and the dim room was illuminated by the hazy light, and there was a faint smell of blood floating in the air. Nanxing was lying on the bed, and his whole body was as wet as water, and his body had long been numb in pain. The clear eyes were bright, and his eyes were staring at the camera facing the bed. She stretched out the tip of her pink tongue and licked her pale lips, and then a bright smile bloomed. Bright teeth and red lips, smiling unruly and provocatively, and showing contempt. He said silently, "Look, I've survived." At the same time, in the quiet study, the faintly lit computer screen was fixed on the woman's charming and rampant smiling face. Fu Jingmo sat in a loose leather chair, narrow the long eyes shook slightly, the slender fingers gently twisted the black chess pieces at the fingertips, and the corners of those thin lips hooked as if there was nothing. As he expected, that woman is not an ordinary woman. The psychological quality and physique have been professionally trained and strictly screened, which should not be underestimated. In this case, Fu Jingmo's dark eyes glanced at the chess game next to him, and the white and black pieces were facing each other fiercely. The layout of the game is very good. The black chess and the white chess are deadlocked, and it seems that there is no distinguish between victory or defeat. He stretched out his hand and slowly dropped the black chess in his hand. Between one son, the situation changed dramatically. You can really stand it. You can cry if you want. Only when a little girl is delicate can she be loved. Li Rong, a private doctor, gently took the medicine and comforted the little girl unbearably. Obviously, the pain made my shoulders tremble, but I clenched my teeth and didn't say a word. Nanxing understood the connotation of Li Rong's words, which meant to make her soft to Fu Jin. She frowned and smiled mockingly. Zhao Didi also has to sit down with the right number. For a person like him, I cry my eyes out, and he still thinks I'm not strong enough. Before the words fell, the closed door was pushed open without warning. Li Rong's action of taking medicine stopped. Nanxing's loose disease subdued to the shoulders to the waist. A large area of snow-white and faintly blue-purple skin was exposed to the air, the delicate and touching butterfly collarbone, the pure white lace wrapped around the chest, and the sexy slender waist. Shu Tasuka took a breath of cold air, hurriedly turned around and covered his eyes, pretending to see nothing. Fu Jingmo looked indifferent, and his eyes were as unfathomable depth and a chilling sense of sharpness. Nanxing smiled like a flower, and the uninjured hand slowly pulled on his clothes. He turned a blind eye to Fu Jingmo's arrival and looked sideways at Li Rong. How can I cry? My baby is full of jade and gold, and he is graceful. He will be heartbroken when I cry. It's enough for me to be hurt alone. I don't want my baby to frown. Li Rong. Shi Tasuka. Nanxing was not embarrassed. His eyes turned and he exclaimed supernaturally. Wow, to baby, I said how the air is full of indulging hormones. It turns out that the baby is here. It just so happens that his hand is injured and he can't buckle it. The baby came to help him buckle to chapter 13, talented and self-taunted. Li Rong. Shi Tasuka. Out of habit, Shi Tasuka silently calculated the number of words in his heart, and calculated how much money should be deducted for this fancy pampering. Fu Jingmo ignored the woman's charming smile and put one hand in his pocket, and his momentum was cold. Shi Tasuka. Yes, President. Shu Tasuka squinted his eyes and turned around anxiously, lowered his head and handed a notebook and a pen to Nanxing. Please write down the prescription for asthma. Nanxing was stunned and calmly reached out to take the notebook and pen. When she was about to open the notebook to write the prescription, the little assistant went around the end of the bed and lifted her quilt. Please, straighten your feet. The president will give you a gift. Nanxing raised her beautiful eyebrows, stretched out her white and tender little feet in cooperation, and watched Shu Tasuka put a rose gold bracelet on her slender ankle with a smile. Wow, it's so beautiful. Sister Li Rong, look, my baby loves me so much that she's afraid that I won't want him if I run away. It's so painstaking and ingenious. Only my baby in the whole universe can think of it. Baby, don't go. Baby to silent baby to. Nanxing stretches his neck and his voice is soft and delicate. May, try your best to disgust Fu Jingmo. It was not until Fu Jingmo's figure disappeared that she suddenly restrained her charming posture, and her proud eyes glared at Shi Tasuka, who was sweating coldly. Shu Tasuka lowered his head like a bean sprout and opened his mouth tremblingly to urge. Please write a prescription. Nanxing snorted coldly, opened the notebook, and wrote wildly. Here, fry it slowly over low heat, drink it for 49 days, and take the medicine until the disease is over. Shi Tasuka. It's even more unreliable to say so. Shu Tasuka and Li Rong exchanged glances and left together. After Nanxing was left alone in the room, she gritted her teeth and cursed. Pervert, dead pervert, surveillance is not enough, and it also pretends to be positioned. Nanxing curled up his legs, and his white fingers picked the cold bracelet on his ankle, and he couldn't find a gap for opening and closing after playing for a long time. This is a clear warning to her that it is hard to escape. Nanxing was so angry that he subconsciously raised his hand to touch the earrings. He wanted to complain to the pickled cabbage about Fu Jingmo's despicableness. Suddenly, he remembered something and his fingers naturally touched his hair. It's so angry that I was so dizzy that I almost exposed it. Half an hour later, Li Rong brought a bowl of steaming traditional Chinese medicine and asked Nanxing to try the medicine first. Nanxing pinched his nose and poured the medicine without saying a word. He grinned bitterly and suddenly missed the handmade sugarcane made by Uncle Jifei. It's very bitter. Come and eat a piece of candy. Li Rong opened an exquisite small candy box, which contained square-shaped sugar neatly. Nanxing pinched one and put it in her mouth. The familiar smell of cane sugar made her eyes wide. Why is this sugarcane sugar exactly the same as that made by Uncle Jifei? Nanxing looked at the gentle and elegant Li Rong and almost blurted out. Do you recognize Yi Jifei? Thinking that Li Rong was Fu Jingmo's person, she swallowed this sentence alive. What's the matter? Li Rong looked at Nanxing, who seemed to be surprised, and asked. Nanxing sucked the sweet cane sugar in his mouth and gave a thumbs up admiringly. It's so delicious. Li Rong laughed softly and generously stuffed a whole box of sugarcane sugar to Nanxing. If the wound hurts, take a piece. If you can't stand it, ask me for painkillers. I'll give it to you secretly. Nanxing clenched the candy box, and his little mouth was sweeter than honey. Sister Li Rong is really beautiful and kind-hearted. Thank you. Li Rong nodded with a smile. When she left with the medicine bowl, she asked curiously, where did you learn your medical skills? She looked at the prescription, and it was indeed a traditional Chinese medicine that dispels wind and cold, calms asthma and cough. Nanxing bit the sugarcane sugar in his mouth and said without changing his face that he was gifted and self-tack. Chapter 14, Turting with the bodyguard, the medicine wrapped in the chest. The day after put on the positioning anklet, Nanxing was free. She can walk around the courtyard at will without anyone stopping her. Therefore, she started the beautiful recuperation vacation mode. In the morning, he flirted with a bodyguard. In the afternoon, he fished for the golden dragonfish raised by Fujin in the ornamental fish pond, and in the evening, he set up a barbecue grill on the golf course. In the thick charcoal smoke, the platinum dragonfish worth millions was smoked and roasted into coke. Take a closer look. The innocent golden dragonfish is engraved with 3 big characters, Fujinmo. Sister Li-Ro, try the fish I grilled with my own hands. It's so delicious. Nanxing enthusiastically came to Li-Ro's residence, and his whole body was dirty with fireworks. Li-Ro lived alone in the backyard outside the villa. 3 connected single-story houses were arranged by her to clean up the fairyland between adults. The small yard was full of flowers, and roses crawled all over the fence and the edge of the house. Doesn't your wound hurt? How can you still have the energy to do these things? Li-Ro hurriedly put down the scroll in her hand and took the plate in Nanxing's hand. There was a trace of worry in her gentle tone. He hurriedly brought hot water, soaked the towel, wrung it dry and handed it to Nanxing to wipe her face. Nanxing smiled sweetly and said that it was okay. I was looking for something to do to divert my attention. You are just messing around. Sister Li-Ro, you are so beautiful here. Nanxing looked at the environment in the house while wiping his face. His eyes fell on his dirty sleeves, and the sweet dimples suddenly disappeared. She held her small face and twisted the towel in her hand with her fingertips. Sister Li-Ro, Fu Jingmo is so stingy. You imprisoned me and didn't buy me clothes. I just got this sick suit, which is dirty. Li-Ro has always been a gentle personality and inexplicably close to Nanxing. Although she knew that the girl in front of her was Fu Jingmo's flesh thorn, she still couldn't help but feel compassion. I'll bring you 2 of my clothes. Don't dislike them. The style is a little old. Nanxing immediately revived, and his watery eyes were flexible and bright. I don't dislike it. I can change the style. Well, I'll get it. You sit here for a while. I can't sit still. Can I turn around the yard? Of course. Nanxing, who was allowed, quickly entered another room to dry herbs while Wei Ro went into the bedroom to find clothes for her. Time is tight, and Nanxing's cold and arrogant eyes quickly scanned all kinds of medicinal materials. Fortunately, Li-Ro's induction and classification were very meticulous, and she found the medicine she needed in more than a minute. Nanxing only took a few tablets of the 3 medicines, carefully put them into the plastic bag she had prepared in advance, and then stuffed them into her chest. A few seconds before Li-Ro came out with her clothes, Nanxing squatted down and sniffed a pink rose. The sunshine is just right, the breeze is not dry, her slender eyelashes are drooping, and the corners of her pink lips are slightly raised. She looks like a lady who has been quiet and harmless to people and animals. Girl, come and have a look at the clothes. Well, Nanxing trotted over to Yurong and did not forget to praise the 100 gardens in a fancy way. Sister Li-Ro, I'm going back to try on clothes. I'll come to see you tomorrow. Li-Ro nodded and suddenly remembered something that stopped Nanxing, who was happy. She ran back to the room and returned the plate of dark grilled fish to Nanxing. I'm in love. I don't eat fish. All right. Nanxing put his clothes on his shoulders, took the fish, and blinked playfully. Then I'll have a barbecue for you tomorrow. After saying that, he ran away without waiting for Li-Ro to refuse. Back in the room, Nanxing stood in front of the camera and took off the deliberately destroyed hospital uniform. The moment the corners of the lips rose, he waved his little hand, and the thin hospital uniform gently covered the camera on the wall. As soon as she turned around, the man's magnetic, caring voice came from her ear. Are you still alive? Nanxing sneered and took a pair of chopsticks and bit it into his mouth. He raised his foot and casually hooked a skirt on his shoulder. He held the golden dragonfish that had already cooled down and kicked open the door of the bathroom. The grumpy crazy girl is online. Chapter 15 The Bearer of the Perverted World. Nanxing turned on the faucet, first scraped off the blackened layer of the fish with chopsticks, and stuffed a piece of tender-looking fish into his mouth. Then his fingers slowly stroked the ear pin, and his tone was sluffy. Not only live, but also live a happy life. Pickled Cabbage heard that Nanxing was chewing something in his mouth, and he was much relieved in an instant. All right, he is willing to give you something to eat. Fart, I fixed it myself. Pickled Cabbage was stunned and said in horror that it couldn't be. Self-produced and self-selling, right? Get out of here. Nanxing was disgusted by the pickled cabbage and turned his head to spit the fish in his mouth into the toilet. Pickled Cabbage wants to make a joke to decompress the dangerous Nanxing. Then what did you eat? Nanxing suddenly poked the chopsticks in his hand into the fish's belly. Cremate Fujingmo with salt and pepper. Pickled Cabbage was silent for 2 seconds. Hard dish, this is a hard dish. Nanxing briefly talked about today's harvest. The bracelet on her foot not only has positioning, but also is connected to infrared microwave sensing with each exit. As long as she steps out of the gate, the security alarm system will be activated. The only exit to escape is the room with the balcony facing the cliff. Did you get the medicine? Pickled Cabbage asked. Nanxing hummed, bent down and took a sip of tap water directly to the faucet. The doctor was careful. I was afraid that she would see something strange. I only took a little and gathered sand into a tower. How many days do you think you can get out? Nanxing raised his eyes and stared at the confident goblin in the mirror, who was only wearing a chest wrap, and wiped the drops of water from the corners of his mouth with his fingers. It depends on your knife and when it will arrive. Half an hour later, Nanxing walked out of the bathroom with bare white feet in a long-sleeved floral dress. With wet waist-length hair. The skirt is very simple and conservative. Cover the collarbone above and cover the ankle below. The only thing that makes Nanxing satisfied is that the waistline and bust are very tight. It can make her man's waist and proud breasts be perfectly displayed. Nanxing turned around twice in front of the mirror, and his thin eyebrows were slightly disgusted. Thinking of it, sultry men like this kind of visual sense that looks strict but bloody, and instantly gave up the idea of trimming. After all, she has personally experienced how greedy Fu Jingmo, who is cold and abstinent, is in bed. Without shoes that could be matched with skirts, Nanxing simply went straight to the target room with bare feet and all kinds of romantic feelings. It was unimpeded all the way. The bodyguards and servants she met on the way all regarded Nanxing as heir, and they didn't even stay on her for another second. Nanxing fell easily, and couldn't help sighing in his heart that Fu Jingmo's means of nurturing people. It's really deep evil to be able to cultivate dozens of people with very different personalities into facial paralysis robots. The whole floor on the third floor was Fu Jingmo's private space. When Nanxing stepped on the stairs on the second floor, a pair of eagle-like sharp eyes stared at her in the hidden dark. The nerves of the martial arts practice were trained to be extremely sensitive and vigilant. Nanxing naturally felt the unfriendly gaze. She hooked her cold lips and twisted her soft and slender waist to make it more enchanting. Gently knocked on the closed door twice, and the corners of Nanxing's pink lips raised a tasteful smile. After about a dozen seconds, the door was opened. Fu Jingmo's face was cold, and the collar of his white shirt was a little open, but it was still neat without a trace of folds. Looking at the woman with wet hair temptation outside the door, there was no wave in her cold eyes. What's the matter? Nanxing's eyebrows were full of spring, and his white and tender fingers raised a strand of black hair on his chest, hooking and winding. Yes, I want to feel the softness of the baby's bed. Before she finished her words, she only heard a bang, and the door was closed by Fu Jingmo. He is ruthless, but he makes Nanxing in a good mood. It can disgust Fu Jingmo at all. She made it all. She came here to see if Fu Jingmo, a pervert, lived in this pervert room. Sure enough, Fu Jingmo is the leader of the perverted world. Chapter 16 Mosaic Video, Central Bureau. The wind is sunny, and the warm wind is warm. Nanxing, who was bored in all kinds of ways, continued to sit by the fish pond and fish for millions of golden dragonfish with earthworms. In just 2 days, the fish in this pool are almost finished by her. Little Rose. A high-pitched magnetic voice made Nanxing, who was holding his breath and waiting for the fish to be hooked, watched a large fish close to the bait sink to the bottom of the water. What a special one. Nanxing gritted his teeth and threw away the fishing rod made of branches, looking back to see who made her lunch run away. I saw a man who was full of energy and dyed his grandmother's grey hair, wearing a black locomotive suit and holding a helmet in one hand, walking quickly towards her. Nanxing squinted. Is this the voice that roared and threatened to chase her stupidity? Young Kanzan, who approached, saw the woman's beautiful and touching little face and the hot curve outlined by the fabric, and habitually blew the hooligan whistle. The explicit eyes looked at the woman from top to bottom, swept over her slender waist, and finally fixed on her surging chest. Don't look at me. I'm a woman you can't control. Nanxing was not shy at all and fighted back domineeringly. At first glance, this man is a prodigal son in love with a kidney but not a heart. Yang Sansen's eyes became more and more interested, and the crimson corners of his lips evoked an evil smile. Wild and spicy, it's his dish. He threw away the helmet in his hand, his eyes were burning, and his hands scratched in the air in bad taste. Have a try? Nanxing. What a special feeling, there is a feeling of meeting an opponent. Nanxing didn't want to argue with Yao Kanzan, so he sneered disdainfully, turned around and picked up the fishing rod, and continued to fish for her lunch. Yao Kanzan saw that Nanxing didn't want to pay attention to him, and his mind seemed to be in the fish pond. He also put away the slut and became serious. Wow, you can do it. I didn't see that Lao Fu spoiled you, but the fish in this pool made you a disaster. Is it interesting to make fun of people? Nanxing rolled his eyes and wanted to put 2 earthworms into the play's mouth. Little Rose, be kind to me. I am your lifesaver. If he hadn't found the anesthetic gun in time, the little Rose would have stuffed the tiger's teeth long ago. Nanxing hee. How about I kowtow to you 3 times? Young Tansen's tone is very generous. That's not enough. Just call me good brother. Nanxing turned his head and glared at Yang Kanzan with a bad smile, and gave him a sincere suggestion. The face is a good thing. I suggest you ask for it. Yang Kanzan raised his eyebrows and gladly accepted Nanxing's suggestion. Well, let's talk about serious things. With that, he half squatted down and looked at Nanxing, and the charming peach blossom eyes were hot and serious. I want to chase you. You don't deserve it. Nanxing fights back ruthlessly with a cold face. Yang Kanzan frowned, pretending to be injured. You are so fierce. You just had an anal fissure. Yang Kanzan, who had never been closed in front of women, seemed to have drunk a bottle of wind oil essence after being hit by Nanxing, and he was happy from his scalp to the soles of his feet. Ha 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 ha. I'm going to catch up with you. Looking at Yang Kanzan, who was about to fall headlong into the fish pond, the corners of Nanxing's mouth twitched slightly. This man must be crazy. Little Rose, I want to rescue you from Lao Fu's claws. Yang Kanzan, who stopped laughing, hesitated to announce the purpose of his visit this time. Nanxing cut out. Do you have this? Of course, as long as you tell me your mastermind behind the scenes, I can keep you safe. Nanxing smiled slightly, and the sweet dimples on his cheeks flashed. Let me teach you a pinyin gun. Yang Kanzan was stunned in an instant. There was a sense of drunken dizziness, and he automatically ignored the word roll of Nanxing. This woman's smile and not smile are completely two extremes, and each side is right in his heart. This little dimple is so sweet that it kills him. It's just a vixen sent by God to take his heart. Little Rose, just be honest. The people you protect are not worth it. You have been imprisoned for a week. Who will save you? Yang Kanzan seriously persuaded Nanxing that it was hard to meet a woman who made his heart pound, and he must not be in the hands of Fu Jingma. Nanxing understands that this guy is here to be polite. She reiterated it again with a serious face. I slept with Fu Jingma because I saw the color. Except for coveting his body, he had no purpose. Then please explain why the passionate video of you and Lao Fu appeared in the bidding meeting. Huh? Nanxing's shocked red lips opened slightly, and he was stunned for several seconds before he realized. You, say it again, what passionate video? Chapter 17. Your official match is an iron pillar. Yang Kanzan stared at Nanxing, who was at a loss. Seeing that she didn't look like a pretend, but like a victim who was used to be hidden in the dark, he explained the situation in detail. That is to say, hundreds of famous and powerful people and media reporters all watched an AV of you and Lao Fu. Although the video was made private, Lao Fu's face could be seen clearly. At that time, it caused a sensation in the whole A city, and Lao Fu almost lost his reputation. After listening, Nanxing fell into a long silence, and his cold and arrogant eyes were stained with a cold murderous aura. The hand holding the branch suddenly clenched, and the fishing rod broke into two pieces with a click. No wonder Fu Jingma killed her. It seems that the game 3 years ago was two birds with one stone, not only for Fu Jingma, but also for her. Yang Kanzan was once again shocked by the evil spirit of Nanxing. The fierce arrogance in her eyes was completely in line with her petite and weak appearance. Little Rose, does your hand hurt? Such a thick branch broke with a light pinch. It was so tough. Nanxing ignored Yang Kanzan's concern. He threw away the wooden stick in his hand and stood up to go back to the room. She wants pickled cabbage to investigate the bidding case 3 years ago. With such a dirty method of shooting videos, she is sure that she can't get rid of that bitch Yi Xiangyi. Little Rose, where are you going? Wait for me. Yang Kanzan followed Nanxing like a fart worm. Nanxing was just about to give him a shoulder throw to make him recognize how much he weighed, when he saw two women coming towards him. One before and one after, it's like a master and a servant. When Nanxing saw the appearance of the woman in front of him clearly, two flames lit up in an instant, and his true emotions and reason, which had always been trained but not to be revealed, were out of control. Almost subconsciously, she strode back to the fish pond, bent down to pick up the iron can on the ground, and splashed it on the woman's face. Countless squirming live earthworms fell on the woman's hair, face and shoulders. Our other woman's scream cut through the sky, and she jumped in place in panic. The scene was so sudden that Yang Kanzan and the servants behind the woman were stunned for several seconds before they realized. Little Rose, you. Yi Xiangyi. If my aunt doesn't kick your uterus today, I'll take your surname. There was a wind under Nanxing's feet. And he raised his fist and attacked the woman with a lost face. In his cold eyes, there was hatred of crushing bones and ashes. The woman had already been frightened by the earthworm. When she saw the fist coming at her, she stared at her tight pupils and froze in place like a wooden chicken. Just when the fist was only a few centimeters away from the woman's cheek, Nanxing saw a mole under the woman's lip and immediately closed his fist. No, there is no mole under Yi Xiangyi's lips. Nanxing looked at the frightened woman up close, and then found that the woman and Yi Xiangyi only looked alike in outline. If you look closely, there is still a difference between the eyebrows and eyes. In a flash of light, the solution quickly flashed through Nanxing's mind. She gritted her teeth and cursed indignantly. You little third. Let you and the heroine steal the male protagonist. Your official match is an iron pillar. Don't play tricks anymore. Coquettish tricks to seduce the male protagonist, otherwise I will see you once and hit you once. Nanxing warned the audience, who were too deeply involved in the play viciously, snorted contemptuously, and strode away. Everyone was dumbfounded. Nanxing's fire is inexplicable and unreasonable, but it seems to be forgive. Wanro, are you okay? Little Rose. She is serious about doing things and watching TV. Don't argue with her. Yang Kanzan, who reacted, came forward to clean up the mess for Nanxing and wanted to reach out to remove the earthworms on Huawaro's body, but when he saw the squirming long nematodes, he withdrew his hand in a chill. A tall and straight black figure stood on the balcony, with a deep and cold breath, quietly watching all this. Yi Xiangyi. It seems that a breakthrough has been found. Fu Jingmo withdrew his sight from the woman's figure, and the corners of his lips evoked a smile. He turned around and glanced at the Thunder Eagle behind him. With a glance, Lei Ying understood Fu Jingmo's meaning. He respectfully made a gesture of obedience and retreated to investigate. Chapter 18. One master and one servant. The dog relies on the power of people. Stop. The man's low and cold voice made the angry Nanxing stop. She took a deep breath. The moment she turned around, the murderous aura in her eyes was perfectly hidden. Baby, good afternoon to Nanxing greeted Fu Jingmo with a smile. Seeing that Xiaofang Tuanzi was also there, she choked the idea of throwing a flying kiss in her mind. The little pink ball's big eyes were bright, and he broke free from Fu Jingmo's hand. He ran to Nanxing happily, and a pair of fleshy little arms hugged Nanxing's legs. Beautiful sister, where have you been these 2 days? I can't even find you. Nanxing was softened by Ma's heart and raised his hand to touch the smooth cheeks of the little pink ball. I have to ask your brother about this. Maybe he wants to monopolize me. With that, Nanxing blinked at Fu Jingmo ambiguously, deliberately understanding Fu Jingmo as a domineering president who was afraid that she would bring bad little powder balls. Fu Jingmo looked indifferent, ignoring the woman's water eyes secretly sending Xiaobo, and Ta's thin lips squeezed into a straight line. Go and apologize to Wanro. Huh. Nanxing pretended to be dumbfounded, but his heart was stunned. Who is Wanro? TSK, this name sounds like a cultural relic level green tea bitch. It's rustic and artificial. Go and apologize. Fu Jingmo repeated, and the tone of the ice dead was full of fierceness. Do you want to stand up for your little lover? Okay, baby, don't be angry. I'll do whatever you ask me to do. Nanxing is the most obedient in the world. Seeing Fu Jingmo's face a little colder, his manic heart suddenly became much better. There is no other way. Her pleasure is based on Fu Jingmo's and has gently pushed away the little pink ball. Before he could open his feet, Nanxi saw 2 women and 1 man coming over. Yang Kanzan walked in front, with a bright smile, and his teeth were dazzlingly white in the sunshine. A sentence suddenly appeared in Nanxing's mind, the stupid son of the landlord's family. Hua Wanro was supported by the servant. She was wearing a long white lace skirt, her long soft hair draped behind her, and a pair of champagne-colored high heels under her feet. From a distance, she looked weak and touching. Little Rose, I just apologized for you. Wanro is generous. She is not angry. You don't have to blame yourself. Don't meddle. Nanxing was ungrateful. He bypassed Yang Kanzan, who was collapsing, and walked to Hua Wanro. I'm sorry, you look too much like Xiao San. Everyone. No, I mean, you look too much like the junior on TV. You are so beautiful. First, a fierce critical blow and a sweet date were stuffed. This is very sorry. Hua Wanro was still shocked, and her watery eyes were slightly red. She looked at Fu Jingmo and smiled aggrievedly and understandingly. It's okay. I know you didn't mean it. Nanxing pulled the corners of his lips and looked at the reasonable woman in front of him. This flower is so soft. It is much higher than the leaf fiber instrument segment. The nature of green tea and white lotus is not leaking, but it is dignified, elegant, intelligent, and generous. Miss, she did it on purpose. Deliberately splashing earthworms on you, deliberately saying that you are a junior, vicious bitch. As soon as she praised Hua Wanro's emotional intelligence, her personal maid and Xing was revealed in her original form. Swearing for the master in anger. Nanxing was not annoyed either, and turned sideways to attract little powder balls. Come on, Fan Tuanzi, there are excellent textbooks here. Let me teach you an idiom. Fu Tianchen, who was thinking about candy, listened to Nanxing's words. Her short legs ran quickly to Nanxing, holding Nanxing's hand, and a pair of big eyes were thirsty for knowledge. Come on, follow my hand and take a look. Nanxing pointed to Anxing, who was angry, and said that this was called a dog, a horse, a man, and a position with a strict teacher. Fu Tianchen read along obediently. Dog. Fight, man, power. Awesome. Nanxing rubbed the little head of the powder ball and said with a smile that next time, I will teach according to their performance, according to their talents. What kind of fox pretends and tiger power, and behaves arrogantly? TSK, your sister and I are a master of bitches. No, I am a talented student, and I made a mistake again. Chapter 19. 36 Tricks to Train Dogs. You. And Qing's face turned ugly and pig liver. She was about to curse, but was stopped by Hua Wanro. Hua Wanro shook her head at Anxing and turned her eyes to apologize to Nanxing. Sorry, Qing'er is still young. She is usually spoiled by me. She is open-mouthed. Don't take it to heart. These words not only show Hua Wanro's goodness to the servants, but also secretly mock Nanxing's narrow-mindedness. Nanxing can't hold back his anger. There is no word angry in the dictionary. Since Hua Wanro likes to pretend to be a prime minister so much, she will treat her as a small chicken intestine leaf to set off her generous white lotus. Miss Hua, is it convenient to add a WeChat account? Hua Wanro was stunned. Obviously, she didn't expect Nanxing to suddenly make such a request. Nanxing stared at Hua Wenrou's action of taking out her mobile phone from her bag, and continued to say with a smile that I had 36 ancestral dog training tricks, and I would send you a free copy. It was really too rude to bark and bite people. It was really impossible. She looked at Nanxing, who was blushing with a thick neck, and frowned. If it really doesn't work, you can give her a whole mouthpiece. Although the mouth fork is a little bigger and costs some money, safety comes first. Everyone. Hua Wenrou, who took out her mobile phone, was embarrassed to death. The genderness on her face finally cracked, and her beautiful face turned black. Young Kanzan wanted to laugh but felt unrighteous, and admired Fu Jingma's iceberg face throughout the whole process. This little rose is really covered with thorns. If you suffer a little loss, you can give a gift 10,000 times. Well, stop talking. It's noon. Let's go to dinner. Young Kanzan came out to adjust the atmosphere, bent down and picked up the little pink ball, and naturally, took Nanxing with the other hand. Before he touched his finger, Nanxing ran towards Fu Jingma in horror. For example, the defiled yellow-flowered daughter, the pure girl, curled her lips and accused young Kanzan of her evil deeds. Baby, he leads you to Hongxing and digs your corner. His hands can only clasp your fingers tightly to young Kanzan's left hand is still stiff in midair, which is as incredible as being struck by lightning. The little rose is still a soft little melon. With this baby, his tail vertebrae are crisp. Hua Wenrou's face was difficult to see the extreme, and the gentle and intelligent personality that she had tried to maintain almost collapsed. She couldn't wait to tear up the vixen who seduced Fu Jingma. Fu Jingma glared coldly at Nanxing, who was expressing his love. Without responding to her, he walked away quickly with his long legs. Nanxing tiptoed and shouted baby twice, and looked at Hua Wenrou provocatively, as if he saw Yi Xianyi's angry face. Beautiful sister, where are you going? Tianchen wants to have dinner with you. Nanxing, who turned around and was about to leave, was stopped by the enthusiastic little fanball. Nanxing didn't plan to have dinner with them. She was full of the bid she received 3 years ago. Just as I wanted to find a reason to dodge the little fanball, I heard Hua Wenrou refuse for her understanding. Tianchen, she has something to do. Would you like to have dinner with you, Sister Er? Nanxing was upset, so Hua Wenrou held Yi Xianyi's face, which was enough for her to fight with Hua Wenrou. Who said I have something to do? Fang Tuanzi, let's go to dinner. Good to the little powder ball is dancing happily. Nanxing took a picture of young Kanzan, who had lost his soul, and felt that the slut may have used too much kidney, resulting in brain deficiency and trance. Cosplay, role-playing, telephone pole. Young Kanzan, who came to his senses from the precious sound, looked at Nanxing, who was full of disgust, with a small arrow in his chest. Little Rose hates him very much. Only sweet to Fu Jingma. Does Lao Fu know how to be sweet? Young Kanzan frowned injuredly, and his tone was sour. Nanxing raised his eyebrows. He doesn't need to understand or even move. I'm a moth, fully automatic. Young Kanzan. This speed is comparable to a tornado. Chapter 20 SHH, let her pretend to her heart's content. In the luxurious restaurant, everyone sat upright. The atmosphere was solemn and stiff, which made Nanxing have the illusion of going to a funeral banquet. I thought to myself that if there was a group of people standing next to me, the atmosphere would be perfect. Fu Jingma sat in the main seat with a cold face, which was regarded as acquiescing to Nanxing to sit down and eat. Nanxing sat cheekily next to Fu Jingma, and Hua Wenrou sat opposite Nanxing unwillingly. Young Kanzan wanted to sit next to Nanxing. Before his buttocks touched the bench, Nanxing stuffed a small powder ball between him and Nanxing. Beautiful sister, where are you from? Xiao Fan Tuanzi took the lead in breaking the silence and asked with big eyes of curiosity. It's me. Nanxing peeked at Fu Jingma shyly, raised his hand sideways to block his mouth, and said loudly that I was your brother's man in a whispering manner. This sentence clearly fell into everyone's ears. Everyone's faces were different, but Fu Jingma had an iceberg face for 10,000 years. With a crisp sound, Young Kanzan, who had a collapsed face, threw the fork into the plate. Little Rose, you don't like Lao Fu at all. Can you stop pretending? Listen to this angry tone, I'm jealous. Nanxing's face did not change, and he still looked like a girl Huaicheng. He nodded and admitted. I don't like Mo Bao. I love him. You. Young Kanzan gritted his teeth in anger, put his hands around his chest on the back of the chair, searching for evidence in his mind that Nanxing didn't like Fu Jingma. Hua Wenrou has been holding back and didn't make a sound. She knew that Fu Jingma was quiet, and she was even more afraid of talking at the table. She didn't want to destroy her image in Fu Jingma's heart. She clenched her hand on her thigh and waited for Fu Jingma to reprimand the uneducated Nanxing. But after waiting for a long time, his palms hurt, and the dishes were served. Fu Jingma never opened his mouth. Hua Wenrou secretly glanced at Fu Jingma, who was eating elegantly. She loved him for more than 10 years, but she could never guess what he was thinking about, and even his joys and sorrows. His acquiescence of Nanxing's acquiescence made Hua Wenrou's jealous teeth itch. It was not easy for her to have a seizure, so she coughed lightly and let Nanxing, who was waiting behind her, attack. Nanxing was looking down at a plate of white truffles, with chopsticks hanging above the plate, hesitating whether to eat it or not. It doesn't feel very fresh. Haven't you seen it? This is a white truffle shipped by air from Italy. You don't think it's a mushroom, do you? Anqing's sharp and bitter voice sounded, and there was a lofty sarcasm in her words. Nanxing, this thing is everywhere in the mountains. At best, it is her instant noodle partner. Seeing that Nanxing didn't talk back, Anqing thought he had poked Nanxing's pain point and continued to show a sense of superiority. That's right, 1 gram of truffle and 1 gold. This kind of diamond on the table is precious and delicious, which is indeed not seen in poor and remote areas. Eat more, which may be the highlight of your life. Nanxing sneered and put down his chopsticks slowly. Before he could fight back, Yang Kanzan protected the calf. Anqing, don't bully the little rose, talk strangely. SHH. Nanxing stretched out his index finger and put it on his lips, staring at Yang Kanzan as if he was stirred up. Let's not talk, give her a stage and let her pretend to her heart's content. Anqing, who was still proud a second ago, turned pale because of Nanxing's words. Nanxing stared at Hua Wenro with a stiff smile and picked up a thin piece of truffle. He didn't need to taste it to know how long the truffle had been placed. The rotten truffles have been left for more than a week, and you still regard it as a treasure, blowing the ceiling and falling. Oh, the class door is playing with the axe. With that, Nanxing's cold and proud eyes swept to Anqing, smiling and saying that it would rain at night. Be careful. After all, pretending to be struck by lightning. Chapter 21 I have never lost with my mouth. In this meal, Nanxing won a big victory. When leaving the restaurant, Yang Kanzan came to the South Stir and praised your mouth. Have you participated in the training camp? It's just a little competent in fighting with people. Nanxing is full of confidence. That's right, my sister has never lost. Yang Kanzan is the word of a tiger and wolf again. Xiaofan Tuanzi dragged Nanxing to eat fruit. Nanxing wanted to refuse, but in line with the principle of being angry to death, he happily went to the living room under Anqing's white eyes. Ah, watermelon. Nanxing doesn't like many fruits to eat. Watermelon is the same. She hasn't even eaten wild fruits these days. At this time, she is really greedy when she sees the watermelon in the crystal plate. Do you like watermelon? Yang Kanzan looked at Nanxing's eyes and attentively poked 2 pieces of watermelon with a toothpick, one for Nanxing and one for Xiaofan Tuanzi. I thought it would please the beauty, but I didn't expect to be rejected by Nanxing. I don't need a toothpick to eat. I want to eat with a spoon. The imed is that it is not satisfying to eat like this. She wants to hold half of the watermelon to eat. Yang Kanzan was stunned for 2 seconds before he reacted and stuffed the iced watermelon into his mouth. You wait for little Rose, and I'll go to the kitchen to get it for you. Nanxing hummed and smiled at Yang Kanzan. Yang Kanzan was so fascinated that he couldn't walk. In fact, Nanxing wants to eat iced watermelon crazily, but she can't eat ice because she is cold, so she can only restrain herself. Brother Jingmo, my mother attended a charity auction a few days ago and took a pair of Hutian jade go. She knows that you like to collect go, so she specially asked me to send it to you. Hua Wenro's voice was as gentle as the spring water in March. She took the chess box from Anqing's hand and handed it to Fu Jingmo. Fu Jingmo looked cold from the beginning to the end, half leaning on the side of the leather sofa, and his whole body was a little lazy. If you have a heart, thank my aunt for me. He didn't reach out to pick it up, but only said a polite and cold word. The perfunctory Nanxing was embarrassed for Hua Wenro. Hua Wenro responded obediently, but she didn't feel embarrassed and gently put the go on the table. Looking at Hua Wenro's shy appearance, Nanxing suddenly felt that she did not have a deep and thorough understanding of the word dog licking. Fu Jingmo said, Hua Wenro is fashionable? Little Rose, the watermelon is coming. Yang Kanzan held half a watermelon and sat beside Nanxing like a treasure. Ah, spoon, I picked a small one for fear that you would hold it heavy. Thank you. Nanxing could feel Yang Kanzan's heavy breathing. He should have run over. For the sake of watermelon, he tolerated him sitting beside him. Yang Kanzan ran with dry mouth and tongue. He stared at Nanxing digging a spoonful of watermelon heart, the sweetest and most delicious spoonful, bypassing the small powder ball, stretching out his arm and handing it to Fu Jingmo. Mobao, watermelon heart is for you, and my heart is also for you. Yang Kanzan. My heart is broken. Fu Jingmo narrowed his dark eyes and said indifferently that he would eat by himself, blocking your mouth. No, watermelon can't be blocked. Nanxing's eyes were burning and he stared straight at Fu Jingmo's thin lips. You have to do it. After saying that, she blinked her eyes gently, charming to the bone. Yang Kanzan couldn't stand it and even felt that the green light was shining above his head. In his consciousness, the woman he likes is his woman. Enough. You despise and look down on Lao Fu. On the golf course, you even raised your middle finger to him. The corners of Nanxing's mouth twitched slightly. This guy is the strength to dismantle the platform. You can still see it so clearly in the middle of the night. Is it an owl? Fart. You are lame. That's obviously love. Nanxing's thumb and forefinger were staggered together, and he stroked Yang Kanzan angrily. Then he turned around with a smile, and his hands went back and forth, quickly firing a love-critical strike at Fu Jingmo. Little love launch to Bayu Biu Biu to Mobile. Quickly receive my little heart to chapter 22 Good Beast and a Man. The end of a loving critical strike on the iceberg is to receive a cold eye from an iceberg. Fu Jingmo's face was cold and he slowly stood up from the sofa. His slender fingers sorted out the precious and exquisite silver cufflinks, and he carelessly issued an expulsion order. It's dangerous to go down the mountain road. You can go. I won't go. Yao Kanzan didn't want to leave before he persuaded the little Rose. He crossed his legs and put his arms on the edge of the sofa, looking like a young man who was here. Fu Jingmo frowned slightly, and his dark cold eyes swept at Yao Kanzan, who was shouting, "Get out of here!" Yao Kanzan was indifferent to a word, but it embarrassed Hua Waro to the extreme. She is also among the people expelled by Fu Jingmo. Brother Jingmo, don't be angry. Hua Waro pulled out a natural smile, and her red cheeks couldn't hide her embarrassment. She slowly stood up, and the corner of her eyes caught a glimpse of Naoxing, who was in harmony with Fu Tianchen. She was jealous and kept a decent smile on her face. Brother Jingmo, I have someone to make an appointment with in the afternoon, so I won't bother you. Fu Jingmo nodded. Hua Wanro looked at Fu Jingmo reluctantly and took Naoxing away knowingly. She can't be as cheeky as young Kanzan. She can only wait for the next birthday banquet to come here. The annoying master and servant left. Naoxing ate watermelon happily and fed the little powder balls to drink watermelon juice from time to time. Don't forget to praise Fu Jingmo. Mo Bao, what you just said is really powerful and wonderful. Great. Fu Jingmo frowned and tightened his eyebrows, ignoring Naoxing's bright and delicate little face. Tianchen, go upstairs to do your homework. Brother, I want to play a little longer. Before Fu Tiancha's coquettish little milk sound disappeared, Fu Jingmo called Chitasuka and ordered in a cold voice. Send Tianchen back to her old house. Fu Tianchen immediately jumped off the sofa, hugged Fu Jingmo's long legs, said good words pitifully, did her homework, and listened to her brother. Fu Jingmo pulled Fu Tianchen upstairs with an expressionless face. Fu Tianchen turned around reluctantly, rolled her rosy little mouth, and waved goodbye to Naoxing. Naoxing smiled and waved the iron spoon, feeling sad from the bottom of his heart for Xiao Fantuanzi to have such an older brother. TSK, it's more terrible than the Ing teaching director. It's a beast. Yang Kanzan was eager to slander Fu Jingmo and said yes. Lao Fu is serious, dull, and boring. Yang Kanzan. Fu Jingmo paused and turned sideways, with a cold sharpness in his eyes. You also go upstairs. Yang Kanzan. The bad words are a minute early. A gem blue Ferrari drives carefully on the rugged and winding mountain road. Anqing covered her high and swollen cheeks, lowered her head and shrank by the car door to sob. Hua Wanro's face was full of ferociousness, and her eyes with exquisite eye makeup were burning with jealousy. She would vent all the neglect of Fu Jingmo on Anqing. Stupid mouth and tongue. Even a little slut can't say it, and it makes me embarrassed. I'll beat you to death. Make you coquettish. Let you wave. Let you seduce brother Jingmo. I'll tear you apart. Hua Wanro treated Anqing as a southern star, pounced on her, punched and kicked, and was so angry that her saliva flew wildly. Completely transformed into a vulgar bitch. The driver has long been familiar with this scene. He glanced at the rearview mirror from time to time with an indifferent face. People like them who live at the bottom must learn to meddle less if they want to make a good job. After beating and scolding for more than 10 minutes in a row, Hua Waro's tired hands hurt, and her mouth and tongue were dry, and then she stopped violence against Anqing. Chapter 23 You Can Call Me Your Father. Anqing's nose was bruised and her face was swollen, and she was eager to make up for it. She swallowed the blood in her mouth and foamed, flattering Hua Waro. Miss, you worry too much. Master Fu and you are a natural couple. That slut is only worthy of thousands of people to ride and thousands of people to be oppressed. The born slutty and lowly embryos can never get into Master Fu's eyes. After Hua Waro was angry, she felt much more comfortable when she heard her favorite words of a natural couple. She lowered her eyes and rubbed the silver pink nail polish. She just used too much force, and the corners were scratched and worn out a little. What do you think can I do to make that slut disappear? Anqing's eyes, which were still in tears, flashed a trace of cruel poison, and she offered a plan in a flattering way. Next week is Master Fu's birthday. Let's. After listening to Anqing's proposal, Hua Waro showed a satisfied smile on her face. She glanced at Anqing's bloody face and softened her tone. If you are a little stupid and smart, I will double your salary after it is done. Thank you, miss. Anqing was grateful to Duda and flattered harder. Hua Wanro turned her eyes and stared out of the window, and her eyes burst out with destructive fierceness. As long as she thinks that Naoxing and Fu Jingmo had a one-night stand, and she was frivolous and shamelessly entangled with Fu Jingmo, she couldn't wait to buy murderers and destroy the corpses. TSK, you are really inhuman as always. Yang Kanzan looked at the go thrown into the trash can and complained about Fu Jingmo's ruthlessness. He bent down to pick it up. The golden Naomor chess box was inlaid with emerald jade. This box alone must be worth millions. They will give you 30 million bid go. If you let people get out, the world will be gentle and can stand you. Yang Kanzan was injustice for Hua Waro. He picked up a white chess piece and twisted it lightly. The cold and delicate texture was high-quality Hetian jade at first glance. That word roll is indeed aimed at Hua Wenro. Fu Jingmo even rewarded him with a word. Did you tell her? Fu Jingmo sat in front of the computer to deal with official business, staring at the screen with cold eyes, and asked carelessly. Yang Kanzan felt his scalp numb. He threw away the pieces in his hand with a guilty mind and pretended to be stupid. What did I tell her? Next time, you will be the one who fights with the tiger. Yang Kanzan. Well, Wenro also wanted to see what her rival looked like. People who eat grains are curious about gossip. Fu Jingmo's cold eyes swept, and Yang Kanzan suddenly felt that his throat was choked. He smiled and changed his mouth. Of course, you are an exception. You absorb the essence of the sun and the moon, and there are number 7 emotions and 6 desires of our mortals. You can get out of here. Fu Jingmo is the most annoying and talkate. Yang Kanzan happens to be the king of nonsense. Yang Kanzan raised his eyebrows, and this time he was very cheerful. Okay, get out of here. Give it to me, little Rose. I'm attracted to her. Fu Jingmo's sharp eyes narrowed, his body leaned against the back of the chair, and his slender white fingers closed, glaring at the serious Yang Kanzan. What? The kidney is broken, and the heart has been changed. Yang Kanzan. Old man, my kidneys are fine. Yang Kanzan has played with too many women, and what he often talks about is that I have a kidney movement and want to play sports with her. When he said the word heartwarming inadvertently, he was also a little uncomfortable. His face, which was as thick as a building, turned red once in 1,000 years. Anyway, I'm going to order her. Yang Kanzan ventured out and strode to the desk, put his hands on the edge of the table, and looked at Fu Jingmo's cold eyes. You can open it as you like. Just give me the little Rose, and I can call you your father. Chapter 24. Master Fu is very dark. Fu Jingmo raised his eyebrows, and the corners of his lips evoked a playful arc. What's the name? Dad. Speak louder. I can't hear you. Yang Kanzan gritted his teeth. In order to get the little Rose, he didn't want his dignity and pride. Dad. Dad. I don't have a son like you who recognizes your father. Fu Jingmo's eyes fell on the phone beside him, and his voice was cold. Uncle Yang, did you hear me? Yang Kanzan's face turned pale as if he had been struck by lightning. Looking at the hands-free phone, he suddenly panicked and was at a loss. Lao Fu, you are sminging me again. You. Yang Kanzan. Come back to me quickly. If I can't see you for half an hour, I will smash your broken motorcycle. Yang Yuming's roaring voice came through the top. As soon as he heard it, it was thick and powerful, full of energy, and it was particularly painful to hit people. Yang Kanzan's legs were a little weak. He swallowed his saliva and called Dad weakly. Don't call me father. I don't have your rebellious and shameful son. Apologize to Jinmo and come back immediately. Yang Kanzan doubts life. It's not my father. He took advantage of me and humiliated me. He should apologize to me. With a beep, the phone was cruelly hung up. Yang Kanzan gritted his teeth and glared at Fu Jingmo, who was carelessly turning the pen. Okay, Lao Fu, one day I will let little Rose recognize your dark heart. The corners of Fu Jingmo's lips curled slightly. Let's wait and see. You. Yang Kanzan was so angry that his lungs hurt. He said harsh words and warned you not to hurt the cute little Rose again, otherwise I had 24 minutes left. Fu Jingmo looked down and glanced at his watch, reminding indifferently. Damn it. Yang Kanzan gritted his teeth and cursed, turned around and ran away. If he goes back late, he will collect his precious motorcycles and become a pile of scrap iron. Yang Kanzan's 3-piece hobby, nightclub, pickup, motorcycle. This 3-piece set is an assembly line, which is indispensable. Because Yang Kanzan rides a motorcycle to the nightclub to pick up girls every day. 1 motorcycle a day, 1 girl a day. The sound of water was rattling in the narrow bathroom. Nanxing peeled lychee with one hand while telling the pickled cabbage about the situation she had just learned. According to Yi Qianren, 99.9% was done by her. Pickled cabbage responded seriously and couldn't help jokingly saying goodbye to the bitch. She is your future teacher. Half of the lychee peeled by Nanxing was grazed into rotten mud, and the slimy juice covered the palms of his hands. Give you another chance to speak human language. Pickled cabbage immediately became a human again. Don't be a bitch. She is still very stupid and bad. I suggest you call her in a different way. Nanxing sneered coldly and threw the rotten pulp and lychee shell into the trash can. This string of lychee was taken by her hand, and each one was so sweet that it was greasy. It's still a good way. Nanxing washed away the stickiness in his hands and returned to the serious topic. I observed that this is the most broken black-eared eagle, so the black-eared eagle is sent here, which will not arouse suspicion. Okay, but? You were. Pickled cabbage wanted to talk but stopped, wanted to gossip, and was afraid of hurting Nanxing. Release. Pickled cabbage. Accidentally treated Nanxing as a woman again. Did you really sleep with Fu Jingmo in order to complete the task? Nanxing was silent for a few seconds, and a trace of imperceptible sadness flashed in his cold and proud eyes. She swallowed the lychee in her mouth, but her tone was open-minded and free. It's not to complete the task, but to have fun. Pickled Cabbage is not speechless this time, but heartbroken. Just be hard-mouthed. It's okay. Brother Tai will help you find out the truth. If it's really yes bitch, then the new and old hatred will be counted together. Brother Tai will accompany you to bully the teacher and destroy the ancestors, and kill the ye bitch. Don't be sentimental. We are still suitable for us to take the route of mutual loss. Pickled Cabbage. Although Nanxing said disgust, a warm current surged through his heart. Just as he wanted to give Pickled Cabbage back 2 sensational words, the knock on the door suddenly sounded, and Nanxing hurriedly took his hand away from the ear stud. Chapter 25 Mobao is jealous. Nanxing spit out the lychee kernel in his mouth and tidied it out in front of the mirror. After 2 hairs, he hid all the diamond earrings in the black hair, and then walked out of the bathroom without panic. Who is it? Her voice was delicate, and her little hand gently opened the invisible zipper on her waist, revealing a large area of white and delicate skin. No one responded outside the door, but it is more certain to the conjecture of Nanxing. A charming smile bloomed on Nanxing's lips. A second before opening the door, the zipper fell to the bottom. Her enchanting and sexy body is half covered and half exposed to the air. Baby? Nanxing looked at Fu Jingmo outside the door, and his eyes were bright in surprise. Fu Jingmo was dressed in a well-cut black suit, with a calm and abstinence. His ink-like eyes were deep and cold. At this time, he was staring at the scenery revealed by the woman. The length of the zipper is in the middle of the chest line and the crotch, which is the most perfect part of the body curve. Sexy water snake waist, white lace wrapped around the chest, clearly raised hip bones. None of them exudes a fatal temptation. Baby, what are you looking at? You are so fascinated. Nanxing's innocent little face was full of doubts. He followed Fu Jingmo's line of sight and suddenly screamed shyly. Oh, I don't even know when it opened. Nanxing pretended to be embarrassed and shy, but the action of pulling the zipper in his hand was slow and slow. So horny and thirsty, so lacking in men. Fu Jingmo's cold voice was full of sarcasm, and he saw through the woman's clumsy tricks at a glance. Before Nanxing could react, he stepped forward and grabbed her small chin fiercely with 2 fingers. Nanxing loosened the zipper halfway and raised her head according to Fu Jingmo's force. Her watery eyes were still shy and flustered a second ago, but at this time, she looked at the man's fierce cold eyes without fear. Baby, you're only half right. She licked her lower lip, and her lips were shiny with water. I'm really thirsty and my mouth is dry. But I don't lack men. I already have you. Just looking at your handsome face and being looked at by you gently makes me feel better. Fu Jingmo glared coldly at Nanxing's charming little face, and his dark eyes showed a needle-like sharpness, as if to pierce her obsession disguise, but inexplicably attracted by her pink lips. What a lowly one. He suddenly let go of Nanxing, and his eyebrows were full of cold disgust. Nanxing's face was thrown to one side and almost twisted his neck. This is Fu Jingmo's usual gesture, like throwing some dirty garbage. She pulled her lips and smiled, raised her hand to brush off the hair on her cheeks, and turned her eyes to the cold Fu Jingmo. I just showed my waist. Why is it so cheap? Baby, it's not that I'm lowly. It's because you've been living on this cliff for too long. You're too conservative. I haven't used the really mean trick yet. With that, Nanxing raised his little foot and picked up Fu Jingmo's suit trouser leg seductively. The coldness in Fu Jingmo's eyes became deeper and deeper, and he was not moved by the temptation of women at all. Is that how you seduced young Kanzan? Nanxing was slightly surprised. Unexpectedly, Fu Jingmo came to her place to ask for the blame. I didn't seduce others. The bad taste in Nanxing's heart is stronger. She stepped forward, closer to the distance between the two, and raised her head to explain in a soft voice. A pair of charming and affectionate peach blossom eyes reflected the man's increasingly dark and handsome face. Don't you believe it? If you don't believe it. Nanxing pulled up Fu Jingmo's big hand and gently put it on her delicate and smooth waist. Chapter 26 Rampant Loving Breakfast. Baby, feel it. Only you can make people's bodies hot and breathe heavily. Nanxing's eyes were as charming as silk, and her red lips deliberately sprayed the warm breath on Fu Jingmo's neck. Seeing the man's tight and cold face, she boldly took Fu Jingmo's hand to probe into the depths. The roughness of the man's fingertips and the dry lines in the palm of his hand were tightly attached to her delicate skin, burning wildly and slowly going down. When Fu Jingmo's fingertips touched the lace fabric, he suddenly pushed Nanxing away. Nanxing was not a weak vegetarian. The moment he leaned back, his little hand quickly climbed up Fu Jingmo's neck and deliberately pulled him back to the wall with that force. Are you afraid? She looked at Fu Jingmo's gloomy eyes without fear, and provoked with a smile. Fu Jingmo's face was cold. He grabbed the woman's wrist and shook it away heavily. He left 2 words and turned around and strode away. I hate being dirty. Nanxing looked at the red marks on his wrist, looked down at Fu Jing's angry back, and slowly raised a bad smile on his lips. She has never suffered a loss. Even if she is scolded, she will ask for it back from somewhere else. It's dirty. Nanxing sneered and repeated, pulled the zipper on the waist with his little hand, and slowly licked the back teeth with the tip of his tongue. Then I'll let you have a taste. In the early morning, before the mist in the mountain dissipated, Nanxing was awakened by the roar of motorcycles. It seemed to be in front of her door, like a male lion roaring and rampant. Nanxing gritted his teeth and cursed, kicked the quilt out of bed, and opened the door angrily. You must be sick. Yang Kanzan was riding a coquettish red motorcycle, and his helmet was covered with crystal mist beads. When he saw Nanxing coming out, he hurriedly turned off the engine and raised his mask, revealing his unruly handsome face. Good morning, little Rose, I'm here to send you. Uncle An. Nanxing was very angry when he got up. When he saw the foggy and slightly bright day, he was even more angry. Disturbed my mother's spring or dream. Get out of here. Yang Kanzan. Mouth. The bright smile stiffened for 2 seconds. Yang Kanzan quickly recovered his enthusiasm and picked up the breakfast in his hand and shook it. Don't be angry, little Rose. Go to bed after breakfast. Nanxing looked at the big and small bags of breakfast in Yang Kanzan's hand, and suddenly, he was greedy and calmed down his anger. Taking a long breath, she reached out to pick it up, but Yang Kanzan held the breakfast high. I bought a double portion and want to eat with you. Okay. Nanxing readily agreed. She knew that there was no food for nothing in the world. Yang Kanzan happily followed Nanxing into the room. When he saw the narrow and simple room, his eyebrows frowned in an instant. Lao Fo let you live here. He is really not a human. Yesterday, he was scolded by Mr. Yao for 3 hours, and also reduced the limit of his credit card by 1 digit, which was a heavy loss. Nanxing didn't bother to listen to Yang Kanzan's backfire, so he went straight to the bathroom to brush his teeth and wash his face. When he came out, Yang Kanzan was complaining contemptuously to the camera. A pair of little roses accepted my appearance and complained about Fujima's perversion. Nanxing passed by Yang Kanzan and reminded the audio-visual surveillance for the sake of hot breakfast. He could hear it. Yang Kanzan, who was cursing, was stunned in an instant, and he didn't want to show cowardity in front of Nanxing, and sent out a lightning-like soul torture. There is no table or chair in this room. Where can I eat? Nanxing raised his chin and pointed to the messy bed made by her. Yang Kanzan was so excited that his blood was boiling and hot. Okay, go to bed. Chapter 27. It's not a scum, it's a heart for the world. Nanxing rolled his eyes and kicked Yang Kanzan, who was thinking about it. What are you dreaming about? Squat in the corner of the bed and eat. Yang Kanzan scratched the back of his head and smiled. He squatted by the bed obediently, arranged the breakfast neatly one by one, and was attentive and careful as if serving his ancestors. I don't know your taste. I just bought a little bit of Chinese and Western food. Come and have a taste. It's still hot. Nanxing looked at the dozen kinds of breakfasts on the floor, and drank 5 or 6 cups alone. He couldn't help sighing at Yang Kanzan's efforts to flirt with girls. She bent down to pick up a bacon sandwich, peeled off the transparent wrapping paper, and sat on the edge of the bed to eat. Yang Kanzan also picked up the same sandwich and looked sideways at the little Rose sitting on the bed. Smiling like a stupid and cute araha. If you like Western food, I'll bring you bacon chicken rolls and coffee tomorrow. I want to sleep more. Nanxing chewed the sandwich angrily and refused to come back by Yang Kanzan. Yang Kanzan, who is good at discerning words and colors, immediately self-examined. I came a little early. It's my first time to do this kind of thing. I'm so excited. I'll be an hour late tomorrow. The first time? Nanxing wanted to laugh a little. This guy coaxed her as a pure little girl. Seeing the little Rose's face full of questioning, Yang Kanzan had a small arrow in his chest. It's really the first time. This is the first time I've chased a girl. Before Yang Kanzan finished speaking, Nanxing laughed out loudly. After laughing, she asked with a serious face. How many times have you repaired it for the first time? He has experienced hundreds of battles, his skills are slippery, and he also pretends to make his debut. He is not generous, little brother. Sister, I'm not a fool who doesn't know the world. She can't enter your crowded fish pond. Don't waste the bait. Let's coax other little sisters tomorrow. Yang Kanzan's lips trembled throughout a series of bombing fights, and he was unable to refute. Jinyi's face turned black as the bottom of the pot. Nanxing turned a blind eye and nibbled on the sandwich happily. Feeling a little thirsty, he kicked Yang Kanzan's arm with his toes. Neptune, hand me a drink. Yang Kanzan was so angry that his lungs hurt. This is really his first time to chase a girl. Those flowers and plants on the road before, he just looked at him, and he lay down. He took a deep breath and suppressed the young man's temper that was about to break out. I said, why do you think I'm a scumbag? Have you ever seen me hugging left and right, morning and evening? I didn't say you were a scumbag. Nanxing blinked innocently. Yang Kanzan was coaxed in an instant and snorted arrogantly. It's about the same. He picked up a drink and handed it to Nanxing. I'm serious about you. Don't associate scum with me in the future. Nanxing, who got the drink, nodded with a smile. Well, you are not a scumbag. You just care about the world and want every girl to be loved. I understand. Yang Kanzan. After a few rounds, young Kanzan was so angry that his face turned pale, and finally he slammed the door angrily and ran away. Lao Fo must have spoken ill of him. Otherwise, how could little Rose be sure that he was a scumbag? Young Kanzan, who was scolded, knocked on Fu Jingme's door angrily. Lao Fo, you are so despicable. If you don't want the little Rose, you still don't give it to me. If you don't give it to me, it's okay. You also block me from chasing the little Rose. Your heart is too dark. It's really getting older and more perverted. The tightly closed door suddenly opened. Fu Jingme's expression was cold, and his powerful momentum was not angry, which made Yang Kanzan silent in an instant. Chapter 28. The cuckold broke the cervical spine. Are you sick? Fu Jingme buttoned the cufflinks of his white shirt with a clear big hand and glared at Yang Kanzan coldly. Yang Kanzan, who knew that Fu Jingme must repay the blackness, suffered too many losses, naturally, did not dare to be arrogant in front of him. He clenched his fists and gritted his teeth and asked, "Did you tell the little Rose about my previous love history?" Fu Jingme sneered coldly, and his slender fingers followed the collar of his shirt and turned back to the room. "Do you think everyone is full and has nothing to do like you? Wait!" Yang Kanzan shouted at Fu Jingme excitedly, and his voice was split in a panic. At the moment when Fu Jingme tidied up his collar, he saw red marks on Fu Jingme's neck. Yang Kanzan concluded at a glance that it was a kiss mark. This is even more terrifying than discovering the new world. Your neck? Who? Who did it? Yang Kanzan's eyes widened, and a bad premonition rose in his heart, and his breathing was not smooth. A dark and unclear emotion flashed in Fu Jingme's eyes, and his tone was cold. Go and ask your new prey. You. Yang Kanzan covered his chest with his big hand with a painful look. You actually exercised late at night behind my back. You simply. With a bang, Fu Jingme closed the door heavily. Yang Kanzan was so annoyed that he beat his chest and stopped his feet. He didn't want to believe the fact of moral decline. Although Fu Jingme is cold-spirited and not close to women, he once planted a little Rose. In addition, Xiao Rose is passionate about Fu Jingme and stares at him. Yang Kanzan gritted his teeth and closed his eyes. He only felt that the cuckold on his head was about to break the cervical spine. He must never let little Rose stay here again. Nanxing spit out a mouthful of milk and frowned at Yang Kanzan, who was full of words. Say it again. Yang Kanzan drooping his head, and his tone was more sour than old vinegar. Lao Fu said that you applauded last night. Nanxing cut and ruthlessly exposed it. This professional word sounds like your Yang scum words. Fu Jingme doesn't have this understanding. Yang Kanzan. He originally wanted to cheat Xiao Rose. As a result, it was found that he was nailed to the cross of the scumbag by little Rose. Did you do it or not? Give me a pleasant word. Yang Kanzan was angry, and Nanxing's attitude of neither admitting nor denying made him unspeakable torment and uncomfortable. Nanxing's cold and proud eyes flashed a sharpness. He glared at Yang Kanzan, who was angry, and felt that this guy had a hole in his brain. Question her? You really treat yourself as an onion. How can you tell that I did it with him? Neck. Lao Fu's neck was broken, and his blood was bruised and red. At first glance, it was the evidence of the crime of being careless. Young Kanzan really couldn't say the word kiss mark, and his angry tone was full of spit, as if he was suing a pair of adulterous husbands and s. Oh, the skin is broken. Nanxing narrowed his beautiful eyes and instantly understood where the kiss marks came from, and his red lips sneered with bad taste. It's quite cruel. It seems that she still underestimated Fu Jingme's dislike for her. It's more interesting and more fun. Where is he? In the restaurant. No, you haven't answered me yet. Hey, little Rose, where are you going? Nanxing walked out of the room quickly and went straight to the restaurant. Yang Kanzan followed in a hurry and continued to ask questions. Did you two do it or not? Say something. This is very important to him. If it really rekindles, he will be completely dead. Nanxing was upset by the noise, so he simply stopped and stared at Yang Kanzan, the bossy. I was so anxious last night that my hands were too heavy. I'm going to blow to Mobao. Don't be owing light bulb. Chapter 29 Intenseness versus Forbearance and Restraint. In the quiet dining room, there was only the sound of knives and forks hitting plates. Fu Jingme lowered his eyes to eat slowly and orderly. He was calm and restrained in a cold grey suit, and his whole body was filled with cold breath. Fu Tianchen, who was beside him, ate the food on the plate obediently, and her big eyes were rumbling, but she didn't dare to open her mouth to talk to Fu Jingme. Although Fu Jingme is usually cold, Fu Tianchen, a villain, can feel that today's brother is particularly cold. If you talk nonsense now, you will definitely be punished by your brother for copying table manners 100 times. Beautiful sister. Brother Kanzan. Just as Fu Tianchen couldn't help but want to talk to Fu Jingme, Nanxing and Yang Kanzan came like saviors. Fu Tianchen, a talkative person, quickly jumped off the chair and ran to Nanxing happily. Beautiful sister, my brother is in a bad mood. Can you coax him? The smile on the corners of Nanxing's mouth became brighter and brighter. Of course you can. My sister is the best at coaxing people. She rubbed the little pink ball's head and looked at Fu Jingme, who was eating elegantly. At a glance, I saw that on Fu Jingme's left hand holding the fork, his slender fingers and even the back of his white hand were wiped with crimson with excessive force. Nanxing raised his eyebrows, and the picture of Fu Jingme rubbing his hands with a wire ball flashed in his mind. I suddenly regretted that I didn't untie Fu Jingme's belt yesterday and touch him a few times. Then I would avenge everything. You, why are you smiling so much at Lao Fu? Yang Kanzan stepped forward and blocked Nanxing's sight angrily. Considering that Fu Tianchen was there, he held back the swear words around his mouth and would. Love has changed to ripple. Start. Nanxing ruthlessly pulled Yang Kanzan away, took the little powder ball, and walked towards the dining table with a smile. Good morning, Mobao. To Nanxing's voice became sweet and soft in an instant. He carried the little pink ball to the chair and sat next to Fu Jingme without treating himself as an outsider. She supported her cheek with one hand, tilted her head, and looked at the indifferent Fu Jingme affectionately. Mobao, your hand. Nanxing bit his lower lip shyly and asked the sensitive area softly. He held it for a while, and he became so popular. You are so innocent, Mobao. Get out of here. Fu Jingme's voice was cold, and he didn't stop eating from beginning to end, and he didn't even lift his eyelids. Nanxing was not embarrassed at all and nodded obediently. Okay, Mobao, I like the appearance of you as a domineering president. Good man, I'm leaving. You eat more to Fan Tuanzi. Good. Do your homework carefully. My sister was too tired to be disturbed by your brother last night. She went back to sleep first. Goodbye. To Nanxing smiled sweetly and charmingly, and habitually wanted to give Fu Jingme a flirting look. But considering that Fu Jingme couldn't see her face, her two white and tender fingers pinched each other and made a heart-to-heart gesture. Mobao, please accept my love. With that, her red lips kissed her thumb heavily, making a very loud kiss. Then, like a butterfly, he twisted his slender waist and strode away. Yang Cance's jealous eyes were about to burst into flames. Looking at Fu Jingme, who was not affected at all, in addition to admiration, his chest was blocked as if stuffed with cotton. Little Rose, wait for me. What kind of iceberg are you flirting with? You are flirting with me. The restaurant was quiet again, and Fu Jingme, who had been eating elegantly, put down the knife and fork in his hand. The sunlight shone in through the window, silently cutting out the outline of the man's handsome facial features, but it could not dispel the chill in his eyes. In the plate, the handle of the silver knife and fork has been bent and deformed. Chapter 30. The goblins frowned when they saw them. When Yang Kanzan chased him out, Nanxing had already put away his charm. The cold appearance of the royal sister made Yang Kanzan seriously suspect that Xiao Rose had two personalities. Little Rose, you are so young. Why can't you think so much? Lao Fu is a Taoist monk, a 10,000-year-old iron tree. The ink goblin frowns when he sees it. You can't flirt with him? Oh, I just like to gnaw hard bones. Nanxing interrupted Yang Sansen's persuasion, and the playful smile became confident in Yang Sansen's eyes. He was even more anxious and directly put up a bloody case to scare away Nanxing. Over the years, Fu Jingme has been the target of celebrities in City A. Although he is cold and ruthless, and lives on a deep mountain cliff, and is covered with several layers of bloodthirsty perverted darkness by the world, it does not prevent women from being crazy infatuated with him at all. Every year, only the rejected celebrities and young models can be lined up from the top of the mountain to the prosperous downtown area. Lao Fu is the crusher of women's hearts. Countless women are dying for him, but he doesn't even give people a look. Do you think you are better than them? After telling several tragic cases, Yang Kanzan saw that Nanxing had been silent and thought it had worked, so he used the last blow of soul torture. Nanxing hooked his lips and smiled, as if he was serious as an aftertaste. I have seen Fu Jingme's tight abdominal muscles, his chest is undulating, his breathing is heavy, and his eyes are full of scarlet. Yang Kanzan. There is no man in the world who can't be flirted with, only women who are not coquettish enough. Yang Kanzan. After saying this bluntly, Nanxing looked up at the sun. The sunlight was not strong or weak, which happened to be the time for the death roll to dry the herbs. She has to do business and can't talk nonsense with this guy anymore. I still have something to do. Don't follow me anymore. Yang Kanzan was stimulated by Nanxing's words. She was very good at grasping keywords. A few words made him imagine those entangled pictures. She was so jealous and annoyed that her chest ached. Do you really like Lao Fu? Nanxing walked very fast and answered without looking back. I don't like you anyway. Yang Kanzan was hit by another arrow in his chest, poking the tip of his heart. He took a deep breath and suppressed his rushing anger. Little Rose, can you be a little friendly to me? Sorry, there are only two kinds of men in the world in my eyes, one is called Fu Jingme and the other is called strangers. Yang Kanzan. Little Rose, you. Are you annoyed? Get out of here. Nanxing's cold and proud eyes glanced at Yang Kanzan. This guy really had no eyes and had to force her to say something unpleasant. This disgusted look, get out of here, completely angered Yang Kanzan. He is not convinced. He has never been disliked by any woman like this. Yang Kanzan grabbed Nanxing's arm and asked angrily why you had to flirt with Lao Fu. What's worse than Lao Fu? Nanxing was in a hurry to find Li Rong. He really didn't have time to talk nonsense with Yao Kanzan anymore, so he simply gave him a shoulder-to-shoulder fall. With a dull and loud bang, Yao Kanzan, who is 1.88 meters, was knocked down on the grass. Maybe it was too sudden, or Yao Kanzan felt too ashamed and lay on the ground for a long time without responding. Cut! Nanxing sneered disdainfully and turned his wrist bones. I haven't hit anyone for a long time. It's so cool. She raised her feet and left. As soon as she took 2 steps, she was stopped by Yao Kanzan, who was deeply obsessed. Little Rose. You haven't answered me yet? How can I be worse than Lao Fu? Nanxing turned around, but his eyes fell on the cold grey not far away. On the figure, he said that you were not bad word by word, but Mobao was jealous. I didn't do anything, and he said that I seduced you. If I dared to be sexy and charming to you, he would punish me severely with his body. Chapter 31 Waterloo in the history of flirting with girls. She said this to Fu Jingmo, but it was Yao Kanzan who was lying on the ground who collapsed. Yao Kanzan was angry and annoyed, but he was helpless. No matter how he slandered Fu Jingmo, in the eyes of Little Rose, Fu Jingmo has no flaws from head to toe. No matter how indifferent Fu Jingmo is, in the eyes of Little Rose, Fu Jingmo is a walking aphrodisiac. When it comes to Fu Jingmo, the Little Rose is full of spring. Ah. Yao Kanzan pulled the grass and beat the ground in a dog-like way. After venting, he looked up and couldn't see the Little Rose. Suddenly turning over, he lay on his back on the grass and closed his blood-red eyes in frustration. The title of his woman harvester is invalidated. Little Rose is the Waterloo in his history of flirting with girls. He knows sweet heart. Nanxing helps Li Rong dry herbs every morning. While Li Rong is not paying attention, he steals the medicinal herbs and stuffs them into his chest. After stealing for several days, the amount of medicine is enough. The reason why she came on time was to take care of her. She doesn't like to owe people as a debt. Before the black-eared eagle didn't come, he worked to resist people's kindness. All right, stop it. Come and have a sither of tea and have a rest. Li Rong waved her hand to greet Nanxing, and a long cotton and linen skirt fell on her feet. She was intelligent and elegant, and she was indisputable with the world. All right? Nanxing put down the medicinal herbs in his hand and ran to the pavilion with bright eyes. Li Rong is not only clever in mind, but also good at making snacks. Nanxing relies on her snacks these days, so that she can find a trace of worth it in the world in the cremation of Fu Jingmo with salt and pepper. Wow, is there flowers or pastries on this plate? It's so beautiful. Nanxing looked at the peach blossom-shaped pastry in the crystal plate, swallowed his saliva, and sincerely praised Li Rong as an extinct treasure woman in the 21st century, opening a fancy rainbow boast. Li Rong blushed when she was praised and smiled shyly to ask Nanxing to eat more. I think you know a lot about traditional Chinese medicine. Do you go to the University of Traditional Chinese Medicine? Those rare and cold medicinal materials can also be dried and preserved by Nanxing in the correct way. She is not inferior to her, a traditional Chinese medicine doctor for decades. Nanxing hesitated for 2 seconds and nodded with a smile. Although she has a good impression of Li Rong, she is far from telling the truth. No wonder, you must be a good student with excellent character and study. That's great. Li Rong's eyes sparkled with light, full of appreciation and love for Nanxing. As an older generation of doctors, she hopes to see young people pass on traditional Chinese medicine. Nanxing's face, the skin was thick, and the eyes that had high expectations for Li Rong did not feel guilty at all. With a smile, she smiled and had a hand of snacks and a hand of black tea. No matter what Li Rong said, she nodded and agreed. There is a big pair, and she will carry the banner of revitalizing traditional Chinese medicine in the future. By the way, it will be Jingma's birthday in 2 days, and it will be more lively than usual. Li Rong stopped at this point, gave Nanxing a look of seizing the opportunity, picked up the enamel porcelain pot, and went back to the room to add tea. As smart as Nanxing, she understood Li Rong's hint in seconds. The corners of her lips evoked a playful arc and threw the remaining pastries into her mouth. Wei Rong asked her to seize the opportunity of the birthday banquet to escape. Perverted birthday. Nanxing looked down at the bracelet on her left foot. The cold touch and the rubbing when walking made her very unhappy every minute and every second. This is a shame. Why don't you give him an unforgettable birthday present and let's go? Chapter 32 The British name that must be reported. After making this decision, Nanxing went back and immediately contacted the pickled cabbage. The birds and eagles trained in Wangyou Villa have numbered positioning ankles on their claws, which can monitor their flight speed and position by computer, so that the black-eared eagle can soar in the mountain for 2 days and then come to send her a knife. In order to satisfy your bad taste, are you really going to stay for 2 more days? In fact, pickled cabbage is not surprised. Nanxing has always been a Tai Hanan who would rather lose 1002 than hurt the enemy 800. He is just worried about Nanxing's safety. Nanxing sat on the washstand, with a plate of exquisite snacks on her lap, and her 2 slender legs swaying pleasantly. Compared with the tension and worry of pickled cabbage, she, a trapped party, was not a big deal at all. Well, my aunt has been so angry. If I don't leave again, my reputation will be ruined. What English name? Nanxing swallowed the sweet and greasy pastry in his mouth, and his cold and arrogant eyes flashed with cold light. The English name that must be revenged if there is a grudge. Pickled cabbage. Are you sure this is an English name? The next day, young Kanzan delivered a steaming loving breakfast on time in the morning mist. Nanxing, who got up and was very angry, roared and rewarded a word roll, and young Kanzan left. At noon, young Kanzan was resurrected with blood, rode a coquettish red motorcycle and sent a loving lunch. Nanxing rewarded him as a psychopath, and young Kanzan left aggrievedly. In the evening, young Kanzan, who was fully charged, returned again passionately and sent a loving dinner. Nanxing, who roared with a sore throat, gave him a big white eye and kicked the dinner away. Young Kanzan left crying. Nanxing thought that young Kanzan was just a whim, but he never thought that young Kanzan became more and more courageous, and the more he scolded, the more he became. For 2 consecutive days, the food was delivered one by one. At noon on the 3rd day, Nanxing felt that it was necessary to guide Yang Kanzan back to the right path, so she calmly asked Yang Kanzan to bring 2 boxes of self-heating hot pot and 2 bottles of beer at night. She talked to him about her life. As night fell, a man and a woman sat on the tall and dense sycamore tree with their foreheads. "Can you do it or not?" The woman's angry questioning. The man was smiling, and his magnetic voice showed a wisp of remilty. Can, don't worry, wait a little longer, I haven't got up yet. Young Kanzan. If you ruin my hot pot by mistake, I will push you down. Okay, you don't need to push it. I'll jump by myself. Young Kanzan raised his hand to wipe the sweat on his forehead. A self-heating little hot pot, just because he wanted to maintain his gentlemanly demeanor, he rushed to mix water before the little rose. As a result, in the long waiting 15 minutes to boil, the little rose questioned and warned him countless times. Gurgling. The little hot pot showed signs of boiling. Nanxing's eyes lit up in an instant, and young Kanzan's hanging heart finally fell down. Wow, it smells so good. Nanxing sniffed the fragrance and swallowed his saliva. I rubbed my little hands with high expectation, and my sweet smile bloomed brightly. Young Kanzan's heart suddenly fell deep and soft, and he was seduced by the appearance of Nanxing, a little girl. He looked at her eyes as tender as water. Little Rose, your smile is so sweet. My brother's life is gone. Cut. Nanxing turned back to Leng Yangyi in a second, and knocked on young Kanzan, who was smiling with chopsticks. It's time to eat. Don't talk about the quotations of scumbags and scumbags. Young Kanzan curled his lips. I don't know why, in front of Nanxing, who was full of cool aura, he automatically changed from a young master to a little fan. Little Rose, this is not a quote from a scumbag, but a love story. Fart. This is obviously. Nanxing held back the second half of the sentence. This is obviously a disgusting word that she doesn't want Fu Jinmo to get over. Chapter 33. This guy has a lust for her. The moment the lid of the little hot pot was lifted, the soul of Nanxing was sublimated. Hot pot is her favorite food. Cool. That's the smell. Nanxing took a sip of spicy soup and was satisfied as if he had won the whole world. Young Kanzan couldn't take his eyes off the appearance of Nanxing's gluttonous cat. He never thought that a box of dozens of small hot pot could please the beauty. He instantly had the idea of opening a hot pot restaurant. Eat slowly and don't burn it. He kindly instructed, watching Nanxing inhale cold air and stuffing steaming vermicelli into his mouth. His heart was about to fall out. Nanxing, who hasn't eaten hot pot for more than half a month, can't talk at this time. He was planning to eat and chat, but only the sound of stalking noodles and chewing food. Young Kanzan looked at the whole process affectionately. Nanxing buried his head and ate happily all the way. It was not until the box of hot pot was finished that Nanxing remembered that young Kanzan was still sitting on the tree. TSK, that's good. The young man has a future, and the hot pot he bought deeply won my heart. Nanxing snocked her mouth and tasted it. She was soft-mouthed. She had to praise her conscience. Young Kanzan's eyes were deep, staring at the delicate red lips of the little Rose, and his throat couldn't help rolling down. Little Rose, you have oil on the corners of your mouth. Nanxing subconsciously stuck out the tip of his tongue and licked it, turning his eyes to look at the stunned young Kanzan. Is there anything else? Young Kanzan swallowed his saliva and couldn't breathe smoothly. He wants to force a kiss to the little Rose. Nanxing's beautiful eyes narrowed. At this time, young Kanzan was staring at her, just like a dog man who deliberately rubbed against her when he was dancing. This guy has a lust for her. Do you want to scald the whole hot pot with tinfoil? She asked with a smile, but her eyes were as sharp as a blade. Young Kanzan woke up in an instant. No, I don't want to. If you don't want to, put away the yellow waste you are full of. Obscene. Nanxing waved his fist and gritted his teeth to warn, which scared young Kanzan to shrink his neck. The easy over-the-shoulder fall 2 days ago made him see what is called a strange lolly. Double standard. Young Kanzan remembered the difference between Xiao Qiangwei for him and Fu Jinmo, and suddenly felt aggrieved and sad. Nanxing hummed softly, not intending to spend time with young Kanzan repeatedly on this issue. He picked up a can of beer and bent his index finger to gently pull the ring. She raised her head and took a sip. only to find that it was sweet and sour fruit beer, and immediately frowned in disgust. What the hell is this? It doesn't sting your mouth, it's not delicious. Young Kanzan was very frank and said seriously that I was afraid that you would explore the flexibility of your limbs with Lao Fo after drinking. Nanxing burst out laughing and gave a thumbs up with appreciation. It's worthy of the king of the sea. There are a set of dark words in bed. Young Kanzan was anxious and hurriedly defended that he was not a scumbag. Little Rose, isn't it good to be a senior cafe? What kind of licking dog? Nanxing interrupted Young Kanzan and didn't quite understand his cheap behavior. Besides, do you mind if I roll over the sheets with Fu Jingmo? She often wandered around the major nightclubs and saw a lot of the complex between the rich man. They can experience hundreds of battles, but the women who play must be opened by them. Don't mind. Young Kanzan didn't hesitate for a moment. He really didn't have that kind of complex. Why? Normally. Nanxing looked up and down at Young Kanzan. You are not much better than that group of garbage. Young Kanzan. A mouthful of old blood was held into his chest. Chapter 34. You have to give gifts and run away. Because I know that I am trash and what virtue I have, I don't ask them to be clean. Young Kanzan was so angry that he broke the can. Anyway, he is a canon king in the heart of Little Rose, a dead scumbag. On the contrary, Nanxing was shocked by Yang Sansa's 2 words. This angry confession dazzled her. Okay, this high self-awareness is definitely a good man among scumbags. Young Kanzan. Isn't he still a scumbag? Well, don't be angry. You haven't eaten your hot pot yet. Nanxing poked Young Kanzan, who was depressed, with his elbow, took up the small hot pot beside him and handed it to him. Come on, eat some hot pot to put out the fire. Young Kanzan snorted arrogantly. Before he could say 2 more words, Nanxing ran out of patience and stared at him warningly. I'll count. If you don't pick it up, I'll feed the dog. Pick it up, I'll pick it up. Young Kanzan hurriedly took the hot pot from Nanxing. He didn't even need to count 1, and he was as obedient as a grandson. It's too spicy. I can't eat it. Shall I pour you half a box? He was afraid that the Little Rose was not full, so he found an excuse to let her eat more. Nanxing shook his head in disgust. Sorry, I don't eat anyone's food except Mobao. Why? Young Sansen's stretched brows were turned into a dead knot in an instant. Because I kissed Mobao passionately, the bacteria in the mouth exchanged several rounds, and we ate a box of lunch together. Nanxing said, and his eyes fell on the chopsticks in Young Sansen's hand. The bottom was covered with red oil, and there was also a half-bittered vermicelli. His little face was full of disgust. Young Kanzan gritted his teeth, closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and almost broke the inferior chopsticks. Let me ask you again, what's so good about Lao Fu's iceberg iron lump that destroys humanity? Do you have such a fondness for him? Nanxing held his cheek with one hand, raised his head at a 45-degree angle and looked up at the night sky, slightly narrowing his beautiful water eyes, looking like he was seriously recalling and thinking. Young Tansen's heart beat faster. Looking at the Little Rose who answered this question seriously for the first time, he was so nervous that he even breathed quickly. He vaguely felt that the answer would be different this time. It will be the real idea of Little Rose. Mobao is alive. Nanxing looked sideways at Young Kanzan. After careful consideration, the answer was that he was good at bed skills. Young Kanzan let go of his hand, and the small hot pot and chopsticks fell one after another. What's good? He doesn't want to believe it. He has doubts. As far as he knows, Fu Jingmo has only touched a woman, Xiao Rose. For the first time, a man. What a ghost. Good life, good looking, great figure, not clingy. Nanxing clicked his white and tender fingers, listed Fu Jingmo's advantages, and finally sipped his mouth admiringly. TSK, perfect lover. Young Kanzan. In addition to not being clingy, those advantages are better than blue. In a word. Nanxing patted Young Kanzan on the shoulder, tilted his head, and smiled lazily and sweetly. You, no, play? Young Sansen's heartbreak turned into a puzzle, his charming peach blossom eyes were gloomy, and his aggrieved thin lips were trembling. Little Rose, I also have abdominal muscles and mermaid lines, and I'm still alive. Young Kanzan, who couldn't stand being spoiled and asked for a life test online, Nanxing gave a chill and jumped from the more than 10-meter high fartong tree. He landed easily and handsomely, and Nanxing waved his hand without looking back. Be your happy sea king. Don't be obsessed with me. I'm not the one you can covet. The reason why she taught Young Kanzan tonight was that she wanted to have a birthday banquet tomorrow. Young Kanzan would stop pestering her. She is very busy. She has to give gifts and run away. Chapter 35. All kinds of charming demons. The moon is dark and the wind is high. In the quiet kitchen, Nanxing poured a basket of strawberries into a big pot. When the water boiled and turned into a beautiful cherry red, she filtered out the strawberry residue, put salt and vinegar in the pot to fix the color, and finally threw a pure white long skirt into the pot. After a while, the white fabric was soaked into an eye-catching red. Nanxing hooked his lips and smiled with satisfaction, and a flash of bad taste flashed in his eyes. The skirts given by Li Ruo are too conservative and simple. Tomorrow is Fu Jingmo's birthday, and she is going to become a romantic demon. First, Fu Jingmo's heart was disturbed, and then his bed was disturbed. Thinking about the 100 postures that tortured Fu Jingmo, the excited voice of pickled cabbage sounded in Nanxing's ear. Star. Star. Wake up quickly. Nanxing frowned, and the iron spoon in his hand paused. Hiss. What are you shouting? I haven't slept yet. You shocked my eardrums. Pickled cabbage said sorry, but felt that it was too unreasonable. It's 2:30 a.m, why haven't you slept yet? Want to experience? Where is the position? Pickled cabbage. After knowing each other for so many years, he was still surprised from time to time by the surprise of Nanxing. What's the matter with you looking for me in the middle of the night? Nanxing regained his seriousness in a second, and his water eyes looked out of the window defensively. The pickled cabbage coughed lightly, and his tone became solemn in an instant. This is the tacit understanding between him and Nanxing. No matter how happy the atmosphere is or how awkward the atmosphere is, you can accept it. The black-eared eagle is about 2 kilometers away from you. You can go out to meet it. Okay. The corners of Nanxing's lips evoked a smile, and his eyes flashed with bright light. That light is called regaining freedom. She walked into the dark and thick night, and jumped to the sycamore tree with 3 or 2 steps, stopping on the thinnest branch at the highest point. The sauerkraut in the ear reported the distance of the hail eagle live, 1,000 meters, 500 meters. An eagle's sway cut through the night sky, and the southern star looked at the sharp eagle eyes of the black-eared eagle in the dark. With a smile on the corners of her lips, she stretched out a slender arm, and the flying black-eared eagle fell gently on her shoulder. You are so good. Nanxing stroked the brown feathers of the black-eared eagle a few times. She hasn't been back to Wangyou Villa for a long time. Even an eagle is extremely kind to her. The black-eared eagle seemed to feel the master's praise, and its plump wings rubbed against Nanxing's cheek, causing Nanxing to shrink his neck and laugh like a silver bell. Well, it's dangerous here. Your task has been completed. Go back obediently. Nanxing's tone was gentle, and he touched a slender gold-plated soft knife from under the wings of the black eagle, and even the palms of his hand were burning with joy. Go ahead, Ying'er. She raised her arms, and the black-eared eagle flew away. Her brown wings soon melted with the night. Don't play too much tomorrow. Fu Jingmo has been hiding his glory for the past 3 years, and his power is unimaginably great. He is not the one we can mess with. Pickled cabbage euphemistically persuaded Nanxing to give up. He checked Fu Jingmo's current assets and the elites recruited by him. On the surface alone, he dumped them 1,800 streets of Wangyou Villa.it. Means that when they really do it, they can only call their father to give their heads. Cut! Nanxing sneered disdainfully and stuffed the gold-plated soft knife in his hand into his chest. Squinting at the room facing the cliff. She stood very high and just stepped on Fu Jingmo's room. Don't worry, Sister Xing is measured and will never delay eating hot pot with you the day after tomorrow morning. Chapter 36. I smelled the vinegar on Mobao again. Fu Jingmo is indifferent and doesn't like the noisy environment, but every year on his birthday, he has to open the door as an exception, exchanging this chaotic day for a year's ears. Even if Anya and Fu Jinghe were traveling abroad this year, Fu Jingmo had to pretend to take a few photos of the party to evade Anya because of the bad weather. Except for Yang Kanzan and Hua Wanro, everyone else was notified of cancellation. Fu Jingmo hung up the apology video from Anya and quietly ordered Shi Tsuka beside him. Good president. Shu Tsuka responded respectfully and couldn't help muttering in his heart. The old Buddha is not here. With the nature of the old Buddha, no one should be allowed to come. I don't usually see that Mr. Fu has a good relationship with them. Why did Yang Kanzan and Hua Wanro become exceptions? Pretend to be a scene, servants and bodyguards are enough. Even if he is full of doubts, Shu Tsuka can only keep it in his heart. If he owes money this month, he will not only work in vain, but also have to reverse Fu Ye's money. He turned around and took out his mobile phone to contact the guests, but when he saw the sexy and hot woman outside the door, his breathing suddenly stopped, and all his movements stopped. Nanxing leaned lazily on the door frame and looked at him with a slight smile. A tight red skirt made her skin look like snow, and her proud figure was perfectly displayed. The ravine that is about to come out appears shallowly, the slender waist is not full of a grip, and the white and slender legs. The waist that makes people burst blood. Shu Tsuka's eyes were straight, only feeling that his mouth and tongue were dry, and the air was hot. He couldn't help but think of ambiguous colors, and his nose was about to bleed. Well, you, the president, Shu Tsuka was hooked incoherently, and his heart was pounding, and he hurriedly lowered his head to save his life. No matter how stupid he is, he knows that this woman can't be provoked. When Fu Jingmo turned around, he just bumped into the water eyes flowing by the autumn waves of the southern star. His eyes shifted down and saw the woman's exposed clothes, and her breath suddenly sank coldly. Hi to baby, happy birthday. Nanxing blinked his eyes lightly, and his voice was soft and thin, like a soft cat's tail gently sweeping the tip of people's hearts. Shu Tsuka only felt that his feet were weak. Before the dizziness surged up, he quickly lowered his head and retreated to escape. When passing by Nanxing, Nanxing caught a glimpse of Shu Tasuka's red ears and whispered that his ears were red. What do you think of me? Shi Tasuka. This demon girl wants to kill him. It's so cute. Seeing Shi Tasuka clenched his fist and running away in a hurry, the smile on the corners of Nanxing's lips became more and more strong. Fu Jingmo's expression was cold, and his slightly frowning eyebrows showed the displeasure of being trespassed in the territory. Who allowed you to go upstairs? My heart said that I want to come to see you. Nanxing raised his feet and approached Fu Jingmo step by step. He walked slowly, and his water eyes stared at Fu Jingmo's dark eyes. Baby, I want to be the first to wish you a happy birthday. Get out of here. Nanxing smiled brightly, and the steps under his feet became urgent and fast in an instant, with a posture of flying into the man's arms. But when he was one step away from the man, he stopped steadily. Baby, I won't get out of here. He just came and hasn't seen enough of you. Young Kanzan brought you breakfast with spring medicine. Fu Jingmo sneered in a sneer. Looking at the woman's beautiful and delicate little face, there was no trace of waves in his eyes. Nanxing burst into laughter, laughing so hard that his eyebrows were bent. Baby, I smell the vinegar on your body again. Chapter 37 Mobao, do you want to try it? Her eyes flashed with pride, as if she had captured the traces of the man's heart for her. Looking at the man's cold face, Nanxing deliberately misinterpreted, and his soft little hands climbed on Fujimo's broad shoulders, boldly stood on tiptoe, and his red lips approached his earlobe. There is only the taste of peach toothpaste in their mouths. Mobao, do you want to have a taste? She used an explicit invitation to explain that she didn't eat Yao Taison's breakfast. Her red lips rubbed against Fu Jingmo's earlobe as if nothing had nothing, blowing sweet heat. Fu Jingmo's eyes were gloomy, and he suddenly pushed away the woman on his body. His sharp eyes fell on the woman's charming and delicate little face. Things that are in heat. He scolded angrily, and his tone and eyes were full of disgust. Nanxing stepped on high heels, but there was no stagger under his feet. Looking at Fu Jing's angry face, the bad taste in his heart rose to the highest point. She smiled at the corners of her lips, and her eyes were as charming as silk. Mobao, are you trying to capture the past? Fu Jingmo didn't want to look at the woman again. He turned around and walked away, but was tightly hugged by a pair of slender arms. And the softness of the woman's chest was attached to his back. He was tined all over. Mobao, after touching the waist and touching the lace of other people's trousers last time, I thought you knew his personality enough. Her soft little hands rubbed the man's cold metal belt ring, and her voice was thin and soft. You also come to provoke others and make them want to listen to you gasp for minutes. Fu Jingmo's face was so gloomy that he could drip water. He held his reckless little hand with his big hand. He had no pity on the jade, as if he was going to crush the flirtatious little hand in the palm of his hand. It hurts. Nanxing doesn't struggle or turn back. Auntie, the white and tender cheeks gently rubbed against the man's stiff back, and complained softly with a crying voice, and the ending was mixed with a trace of trembling. It hurts. Baby, I'm in pain. In Nanxing's soft and aggrieved cry of pain, Fu Jingmo finally let go. If there is another time, I will kill you. Fu Jingmo warned in a cold voice, broke his slender arms around his waist, and walked away quickly. Nanxing sneered coldly and followed quickly without fear of death, with weak tears in the corners of his eyes. Baby, look, people's hands are red by you. Baby, can you help others blow it? Baby, why did you pull your tie open? Do you feel very hot? Do you really want to take a cold shower? Baby. Fu Jingmo paused, as if he had endured to the extreme, gritted his teeth and closed his eyes. You've had enough? Not enough. Nanxing curled his lips aggrievedly and said to the person in heat, how can this scale be enough? Fu Jingmo. Brother, sister, so you are here. Fu Tianchen appeared in time, which made Fu Jingmo's emotions on the verge of breaking out, and instantly returned to calm. His frowning eyebrows stretched out and restored his 10,000-year-old iceberg face. Fu Tianchen was wearing a pink princess fluffy skirt, with shiny leather shoes under her feet, and her big eyes shining like stars. She trotted to Fu Jingmo excitedly. Happy birthday, brother. She raised her head, her little face was full of smiles, and her hands were mysteriously behind her back. Brother, Tianchen made a gift for you. Guess what it is? Fu Jingmo's facial lines are cold. Don't want to guess. The corners of Nanxing's mouth twitched slightly. This dog man's heart is too hard. He can treat such a cute little fan ball indifferently and cruelly. It's really equal to everyone. It's okay, Fan Tuanzi. Just now, my sister made your brother unhappy. He didn't guess, but my sister guessed. Before Fu Tiancha's disappointed little face collapsed, Nanxing gently and softly relieved the siege. She bent down with curiosity, thought carefully for a few seconds, and guessed, a small hand-drawn card. Chapter 38, The Imprisoned Little Wife. Wrong. Fu Tiancha's fragile little heart was taken care of by Nanxing. She smiled mysteriously, and the double ponytail tied to her head swayed with her head. Her appearance was very cute. Is that a letter? Nanxing cooperated with the re-speculation and showed great interest. Fu Tianchen laughed happily, like a silver bell. She likes to play this kind of guessing game the most. No, sister, guess again. Painting? Yes, congratulations on your correct answer. Fu Tianchen took out the painting book behind her back, bypassed Fu Jingmo, who was not grateful and did not play with her, and walked to Nanxing. Sister, look, this is me, this is my brother, this is you. Fu Tianchen's fleshy little finger pointed to the characters in the painting and explained carefully. The smile on the corner of Nanxing's mouth froze, and she never thought that she could also be in the picture. Oh, the Tuanze is a great drawing. Your brother is so vivid. She looked at the ugly man with 3 hairs on her head on the drawing paper, and her eyes, nose and mouth were all replaced by straight lines, and praised the little fan group wholeheartedly. I caught Shen Yun. The little fan who was praised was satisfied and resolutely decided to give the painting to someone who knew how to appreciate it. Sister, save this painting for me. My brother is so boring. I'm afraid he will turn around and tear it up. Nanxing weakly glanced at the indifferent Fu Jinmo. Not to mention, he can really do this kind of beast. Well, anyway, my sister is also your brother's person. We both accept the same. Thank you, Tianchen. Fu Jingmo glared coldly at the cheeky Nanxing. The woman was scaly and had no shame at all. She became worse and worse to do with people. At this time, her closeness to Tianchen was also pretending. As soon as Nanxing looked up, he found that Fu Jingmo was looking at her. His sharp eyes seemed to penetrate her skin and see her bones clearly. She decisively regarded this look as a strong love, and shyly responded to a charming eye full of electricity. Fu Jingmo's face turned black and went downstairs with his long legs. Nanxing led the little powder ball and followed quickly like a shadow. Today, she will be the shadow of Fu Jingmo, follow him disagreeable, disgusting him, and becoming the birthday nightmare of his life. Baby, don't walk so fast. Wait for the little wife imprisoned by you. Young Kanzan, who was strongly stimulated, did not return to being a happy sea king. He was insomniac and decadent all night, and even the nightclub didn't smell good. The global limited edition sneakers originally given to Fu Jingmo were also jealous and planned to wear them by themselves. Lao Fu doesn't even give him a woman he doesn't like. Why did he give his favorite sneakers to Lao Fu? The more Yang Kanzan thought about it, the angrier he became. He wanted to push the birthday banquet, but he missed the little rose without backbone. The little rose seemed to have magic, which made him not think about tea and rice. His mind was full of her ancient spirits, and he smiled. After holding on all day, when night fell, Yang Kanzan couldn't stand it. He decisively put on a coquettish casual red suit and rode a motorcycle straight to the cliff villa. He wants to be the most beautiful and dazzling boy in the audience. Take the lime of Lao Fu. The car shuttled on the rugged mountain road and met 2 Ferraris on the way. Young Kanzan recognized at a glance that the blue Ferrari was Hua Wanrou's, and the black Ferrari behind him was obviously with Hua Wanrou. He wondered if all the parents were here. But Hua Yingsheng has always been dissatisfied with Fu Jingmo. The pearl in his palm of his hand could not get into Fu Jingmo's eyes, so he was quite critical of Fu Jingmo. Ice let go of past grudges. It's unlikely. Who is in the car in the back? Chapter 39, The Valuable Emerald Raw Stone. The mountain road was narrow, and Yang Kanzan could not overtake, so he could only slow down and follow behind. Hua Wanrou, who was dressed in the carriage, was holding a mirror in her hand to make up all the time, looking nervous and excited. Every year, Fu Jingmo's birthday is the day she looks forward to most. Not only can I see Fu Jingmo, but also Fu Jingmo's mother Anya. She knew that if she wanted to enter the Fu family, she had to go through Anya's pass first. To please Anya's heart, she sat half of Mrs. Fu's seat. Miss, you are so beautiful today, like a fairy on earth. And Jing has become a smear of flattery, and naturally, she will not miss any opportunity to flatter. Hua Wanrou's heart was full of praise. Today's makeup, hairstyle and dress were all made by the private stylists of first-line stars. She spent a lot of money, and she was very satisfied from head to toe. The air conditioner should be turned up a little bigger. Hua Wanrou told the driver that in order not to take off her makeup, even if her cold skin got goosebumps, she still gritted her teeth. Tonight is so important to her that even a hair can't be messed up. By the way, in case something goes wrong, you have to take it all around. Okay, miss, don't worry. The banquet is so crowded that no one will doubt us. An Jing was full of confidence, and a fierce stream of light flashed in her eyes. The car stopped steadily in front of the cliff villa. Hua Wanrou lowered the window glass and couldn't help frowning when she saw that there was no cold car on both sides of the road. Anya likes to be lively, especially likes to form a game. Every year, Fu Jingmo's birthday banquet will gather celebrities and powerful people from all over City A, and all kinds of luxury cars are parked halfway up the mountain. What's going on today? What time is it? Hua Wanrou asked, staring at the well-lit villa with her beautiful eyes, and her heart suddenly felt a little more anxious. An Jing also felt very strange and looked at her mobile phone in a hurry. 7:48. That's not right. Hua Wanrou muttered to herself. Before she could think about it carefully, she heard Yang Sanse's magnetic voice. Wanrou, you are also here so late? Young Kanzan took off his helmet and hung it on the motorcycle, and his trendy silver-white hair was a little messy. Hua Wanro raised a standard gentle smile and got out of the car with an expensive bag. In front of people, she doesn't need Anqing to open the door, she doesn't need Anqing to carry her bag, and even Anqing can sit on an equal level with her and maintain the demeanor of a beautiful and kind-hearted celebrity. Kanzan, what a coincidence. I knew we had come here together. Young Kanzan looked at Hua Wanro, who was carefully dressed up, and blew a hooligan whistle, which made Hua Wanro blush. It's beautiful. I'll pour 2 more glasses of wine for Lao for later, and you will fascinate him with your beauty. Hua Wanro lowered her eyes shyly. All right, don't make fun of me. Let's go in. Young Kanzan turned his eyes to look at the black Ferrari. Before he could ask his doubts, he saw 2 tall and burly bodyguards getting off the car. Even if they wear black suits, they can still see the high bulging muscles on their arms, which contain powerful power and full of violence. They are helping to carry things. Hua Wanro smiled and stepped on the champagne-colored stiletto shoes and slowly circled to the front of the trunk. It's a little heavy. Be careful when you carry it and pay attention to safety. Yes, miss. The trunk opened, and the 2 bodyguards carefully carried out an emerald stone. Young Kanzan pouted in surprise. He didn't expect Hua Wanro to be so ingenious this year and put in such a big effort. Did you get it from your uncle? He asked, staring at the dark jade raw stone, as if he was looking at a gold mine. Well, my uncle's cherished love, I begged for a long time before he was willing to give it to me. Dong Guocheng, Hua Wanro's uncle, is a world-famous jade jeweler. More than 98% of the raw stones selected by him are materials that have risen sharply. Young Kanzan squinted his eyes. Dong Guocheng's cherished love is at least worth a small island. Chapter 40 Interesting Conspiracy. Hua Wan and Young Kanzan walked into the villa. The bodyguard carried the valuable emerald stone, and the righteous one also mixed in. The courtyard has been arranged, with tables and chairs, tableware, red wine, exquisite food and snacks, which are the same as last year's birthday banquet. But the courtyard was empty, and there was no guest except for the servants in uniforms. Young Kanzan has Anya's WeChat account. Compared with the silent Fu Jingmo, his godson is more popular with Anya. He knew earlier than Fu Jingmo that Anya Fu Jinghe would not be able to come back. So looking at the empty and cold courtyard, Young Kanzan was not surprised at all. Dispelling guests is Fu Jingmo's style. Don't aim. Your future mother-in-law can't come back. Young Kanzan took a glass of red wine and joked at Hua Wanro, who was secretly looking around. Hua Wanro's eyes were disappointed, but she was so beautiful by the words of her future mother-in-law that she stared at Young Kanzan delicately. Don't talk nonsense. It's embarrassing for people to hear. Young Kanzan smiled, raised his head and drank a sip of red wine to strengthen his courage. He raised his feet and continued to walk towards the living room. The plan suddenly changed. Hua Wanro stopped Young Kanzan, and she had to discuss with Anqing again. I'm going to the bathroom. You go in first. Young Kanzan hummed. He knew the girl's mind. If he wanted to see the person he loved, he had to make up some makeup. Hua Wanro turned around and took out her mobile phone from her bag, sent a message to Anqing, and made an appointment to meet in the most remote bathroom. Big and tall, the breeze in the LF court is gentle, and the rustling of the wind blowing through the leaves and the chirping of taddles hiding in the grass can be heard quietly. Hua Wan gently and Anqing successfully connected. Hua Wanro, who behaved elegantly a few minutes ago, said a few bad words after seeing Anqing. I was so angry that I even threw the bag on the lawn. What should I do? There are no guests, only us and Young Kanzan. If you really drug that bitch, you must be the first to doubt us. It's okay, miss. You worry too much. Compared with Hua Wanro's quickness, Anqing was very calm. She bent down to pick up the bag on the ground and analyzed the situation carefully. At first glance, that prodigal hoof is a bitch who lacks a man, as long as she is wheel. It's dirty. Our master 4 will definitely kick her out, so as not to investigate whether she has been drugged. Besides, it's our people who are in her turn. At that time, it will be sure that she seduced her. No one will believe her explanation. After listening, Hua's soft and tight lips rose again, and her eyes flashed with poisonous snake-like cruelty. She originally planned to let the bitch go into heat in front of everyone, and then let her people be captured. She took the guests to enjoy it. She was unwilling to cancel the plan and could only follow the original plan. Unfortunately, she couldn't completely destroy the bitch in front of Anya. Let's do it like this. You can see my eyes and actions later. Hua Wanro smiled brightly, took the bag from Anqing's hand, turned around and left with an elegant step. When the figures of a master and a servant disappeared into the night, Nanxing, who was lying on the sycamore tree, sneered coldly. The mottled shadow of the tree could not see her expression clearly, but the cold and arrogant eyes were murderous. Pickled cabbage Orpa. She touched the diamond earrings with one hand, and her voice was lazy and playful. Do you think I should play with these 2 idiots? Pickled Cabbage just came to her, and she found this secluded place to chat with Pickled Cabbage. But I didn't expect to hear such an interesting conspiracy. Chapter 41 Seek Comfort and Protection from Mobao. Pickled Cabbage silently prayed for the 2 stupid women who didn't know whether they were alive or dead. May there be no spring in heaven. Medicine, have a good trip. Are they the imitation version of Yi Xiangyi and the dog-legged spirit you mentioned? Nanxing slowly turned his wrist bone and hummed carelessly. When she asked Pickled Cabbage to investigate the bid case 3 years ago, she investigated Xiahua Wanro by the way. There may be two people who look very similar in the world, but there is something wrong with both of them around her. Pickled Cabbage Orpa, have you ever seen a real-life version of a woman who is manipulated by desire and difficult to fill the ravine? Pack Pure Pickled Cabbage. No, I haven't seen the non-live action version. Nanxing cut, and his red lips rose wantonly. By this, are you worthy of the toilet paper you used? Pickled Cabbage. Is it worthy of the children and grandchildren rolled up in the toilet paper? Pickled Cabbage. Wait, Sister Xing will give you new resources. Nanxing cut off contact in the speechless silence of the Pickled Cabbage, reached out and caught a few squirming insects, and jumped off the big tree. In the living room, Hua Waro wore a white long skirt in the style of a celebrity, her long hair was casually but delicately cut, her beautiful face was lightly made up, and her whole body exuded a gentle and well-behaved temperament. Happy birthday, brother Jingmo. Hua Waro's voice was soft, and her eyes half lowered shyly. For Jingmo was haunted by Nanxing for a day, and his face was irritable and his face was cold and gloomy. He nodded perfunctorily and had no interest in the emerald stone sent by Hua Waro. Yao Kanzan couldn't stand it any longer. He put down the empty red wine glass in his hand and held the injustice for Hua Waro's infatuation. I said, Lao Fu, do you know how much this stone is worth? Fu Jingmo looked at his watch, and his tone was cold. I'm not short of money. If you like it, I'll give it to you. Yang Kanzan. The atmosphere is awkward. Extremely embarrassing. With Fu Jingmo's emotional intelligence, the women who like him are blind. Hua Wanro clenched her fingers together, and the shyness on her face was replaced by a strong embarrassment. Even though she had long been accustomed to Fu Jingmo's indifference, in front of her, she transferred her carefully selected gifts to others, and her heart was still sour. Nanxing, who stood outside the door and watched this ruthless drama, suddenly felt that Fu Jingmo was much more pleasing to the eye. Rounding up is considered to be angry for her. Oh, my God, whose face fell to the ground. Nanxing's voice was clear and high-pitched, and he made up for it fiercely. Everyone's eyes looked at the sexy and dazzling woman outside the door. The smile on Hua Waro's face was completely stiff, and the cruel burst out of her weak water eyes. Yao Kanzan was once again amazing, the narrow peach blossom eyes fixed on her in a daze. Everything in the world seemed to be silent, and only the heart in her chest beat violently. Throbbing, throbbing, throbbing. Every time, it makes his throat tighten. Nanxing's red lips were slightly curled up, and the little hand wrapped around her chest slowly loosened. 2 small green insects quietly climbed up her fair arm and stepped on high heels into the living room. Fu Jingmo, who was sitting on the sofa, frowned, and a trace of disgust flashed in his cold eyes. He stood up and didn't want to be under the same roof with the woman. Nanxing seized the opportunity, and his originally delicate little face suddenly panicked. There was a scream in the moist red lips. Ah! There are bugs. Mobao saved me. She shook her arm a few times, shook the worm on the floor, and quickly rushed to Fu Jingmo. The slender arms hugged Fu Jingmo's neck, and 2 beautiful white legs wrapped tightly around Fu Jingmo's waist, seeking Fu Jingmo's comfort and protection. The ultra-short tight red skirt on her body is also because of her posture, which makes her straight buttocks round. Mobao, I took off my leggings. If you push me away, your woman will go away. Chapter 42. Fingers ignite and draw circles. Fu Jingmo's eyes were gloomy, his throat was dry and tight, and his big fingertips hanging on his side trembled slightly. He subconsciously wanted to push the woman away, but the woman's legs tightened again, and her soft lips almost pressed against his earlobe. Every time I say a word, my lips seem to be a kiss. The kiss was gentle, but it seemed to have a hot fire. Fu Jingmo's whole body was hot. Mobao, please be gentle and gently put them down. Feeling Fu Jingmo's tightness and hesitation, Nanxing continued the gentleness and deception of the little woman, and his eyes flashed with a sly stream of light. If she can hang on Fu Jingmo for 3 seconds, she has succeeded. Fu Jingmo slowly raised his hand, and his ink-colored eyes covered the emotion in his eyes. Hua was soft, and Yang Tanse's breathing became solemn in an instant. The two coincidentally, hoping that Fu Jingmo could ruthlessly push away the woman on his body. However, Fu Jingmo's big hand fell on the woman's slender waist. He hugged the woman and turned around to block the woman's petite body in his arms. No matter what tricks you play, let's not take it as an example. Nanxing tiptoed to the ground, slightly raised his palm-stitched face, and his clear and watery eyes stared at Fu Jingmo. He was as cold as ever, and his ink pupils could not see the deep emotions. Mobao, your palm is so hot. Don't you take it off his waist. Fu Jingmo tightened his iron arm viciously, as if he was going to strangle her slender waist. Go back and change your clothes. Why? Nanxing smiled lightly, and his warm fingers circled Fu Jingmo's chest. Although it is separated by the thick suit fabric, the touch like an electric touch when the fingers move is not inferior at all. Her white fingers were like a match, igniting the dark emotions hidden by Fu Jingmo. Ah! Bad guy, my waist is going to break. Nanxing was soft and delicate. When she saw that the bottom of Fu Jingmo's eyes was dyed scarlet, she immediately accepted it. I know, you're jealous again. You don't want me to wear couple clothes with other men. Well, I'm going back to my room to change my clothes. She pretended to be well behaved, passed by Hua Wanro, who was like ashes, raised her chin provocatively, and her smile was bright and proud. Hua Wanro's tightly clenched palm nails were deeply sunk, and her heart was so crazy with jealousy that she almost bit her back teeth. I can't wait to rush up and skin this slutty bitch. Yang Kanzan, on the other hand, was hit by 10,000 tons and staggered incredibly. What did he just see? Unexpectedly, in his lifetime, he could see Fu Jingmo flirting with a woman. The key is that this woman is the one he likes. Well, Lao Fu, you. Yang Kanzan, who reacted, was angry, covered his chest with one hand, and pointed to Fujima's straight back and scolded him with one hand. You actually flirted with my little Rose? You guys are simply too much. I should wear green today. What kind of bullshit are you wearing? Let me tell you, the little Rose is mine. I want to declare war on you. Mr. Yang Tanse's violent temper came up, and he was stimulated to forget his moderation. He roared indecisively, and almost dropped the crystal wine glass and sounded the gong. Fu Jingmo turned a blind eye to Yang Tansen's fried hair and left with a cold look. Hua Wanro sent a message on her back, and her fingers trembled when she was typing. Increase the amount of medicine and put as much as you bring. I'm going to let that bitch be killed by men. Chapter 43. The ancestors lacked virtue and committed evil in their previous lives. Nanxing changed into a casual dress, high-waisted jeans with lilac short sleeves, and one side of the hem was knotted, revealing a small white and smooth waist. The navel was looming, refreshing and sexy. Stepping on canvas shoes under his feet, the loose and soft black hair is tied into a high ponytail, and the delicate and awkward butterfly collarbone is extremely attractive. This is her usual dress, which can not only fight beautifully, but also not walk away. It is also the most suitable for running away. When he returned to the living room, there was no one in the air. Everyone seemed to have gone to the courtyard outside. As soon as Nanxing turned around and was about to go out, he heard footsteps downstairs. The sound of leather shoes stepping on the Mahoth floor made Nanxing stop, and his red lips evoked a touch of playful arc. She turned around and stared at Fu Jingmo in a smoky grey suit with bright watery eyes. He also changed his clothes. The slightly moist hair looks like a shower. Hi to baby. Nanxing smiled lightly, and his pink cheeks were rippling. Fu Jingmo changed his clothes and took a shower without any surprise. She knew Fu Jingmo's disgust for her. The reason why she didn't push her away just now was just a man's possessiveness. It was precisely when she got this point right that she said that she would walk without wearing leggings. Fu Jingmo was also looking at the woman under the crystal chandelier. Her skin was more beautiful than snow in the bright light. There was a sweet smile on her beautiful face. There was no trace of charm in her eyes, only a simple and clean breath. This woman is a demon. She just changed a dress, as if she had changed her face. Baby, do I look good in this? Are you still satisfied? Nanxing Dada ran forward and spread his hands around. The tall ponytail, as she turned around, the soft hair drew a beautiful arc in the air, and a few strands swept over Fu Jima's tall nose. The fragrance of xyanth flowers made Fu Jima's cold eyes suddenly darken. Isn't it conservative and good-looking? Nanxing's acting skills are superb, her smile is bright, and she is a little girl who is looking forward to her boyfriend's praise. Fu Jingmo glanced coldly at Nanxing's exposed small waist, ignored her, and raised his feet to walk out. From Fu Jingmo's glance, Nanxing said a series of insulting words such as contempt, despicable, slutty. Other men play hooliganism with their eyes. Fu Jingmo cursed with his eyes. Mobao, wait for me. I felt the word beautiful from your eyes. Don't be shy and express your love for me boldly. In the courtyard, Yang Kanzan, who took off his red coat, sat at the table and drank wildly. In this short time, he has poured more than half of the bottle of red wine. He couldn't breathe because of the stuffiness in his chest. He could only drink to suppress the fire that wanted to destroy the world. Nanxing followed Fu Jingmo inch by step, and Yang Kanzan looked up and poured wine from afar. The stuffy way of drinking made Nanxing secretly admire in his heart. It's worthy of the King of Sea. Even the amount of alcohol is massive. Mobao, what's wrong with him? It seems that he is not very happy. Nanxing frowned and asked knowingly with an ignorant face. Fu Jingmo maintains the excellent quality of 10 questions and 10 answers. TSK. Nanxing slicked his mouth and asked himself. Maybe it's because you can't get me? She sighed and shook her head regretfully and sadly. There is nothing we can do. There is only one fairy who has been locked in you. Mobao, you are so blessed. Well, the ancestors lacked virtue and committed evil in their previous lives. Nanxing. Either don't talk to the dead, or choke the dead as soon as you open your mouth. Chapter 44. Noah Hammer, the woman sings and the husband follows. Yang Kanzan, who was drinking muffled wine, heard the voice of the little Rose, and his originally heavy mood suddenly brightened up. He put down the wine glass in his hand and turned around. He saw the little Rose giggling at Fu Jingmo. The smile is a little delicate and simple, but it is the sincerity and tenderness he has never seen before. Feeling that someone was looking at her, Nanxing looked sideways and just caught the gloomy loss in Yang Sanse's eyes. Is this guy drunk? Why is there a sense of depression that has just come up from several young ladies? Little Rose, you are so beautiful. Yang Kanzan raised a bitter smile on the corner of his lips, put one hand on the back of the chair, and stared at the innocent Nanxing affectionately. The beauty can't be ignored, and people can't take their eyes off. So, the third in the world. Nanxing raised his thin eyebrows without modesty. It's still this guy who has a vision. If she hadn't been in a hurry to go back and clean up Yiyang, she really wanted to stir up Yang Kanzan and for Jingmo to turn against each other. Let for Jingmo rebel against his relatives. Brother Jingmo, why did you change your clothes? Is it stained with something dirty? Hua Wanrou's face was full of concern and doubt, and whispered softly at Sang and scolded Hui. Nanxing sneered coldly from the bottom of his heart and held Fu Jingmo's arm intimately. You know a hammer, this is called a woman singing and a husband following. With that, her white cheeks rubbed against Fu Jingmo's arm, smiling shyly and sweetly. Hua Wanrou's face turned pale after being beaten. She gritted her teeth and clenched the silk tablecloth. Her jealous and embarrassed eyes fell on the opposite wine glass, and a trace of impersonal cruelty flashed in her eyes. Qing, who was behind him, quietly poked Hua Wanrou's back, hinting that she to calm down and not show her horse's feet at this time. Nanxing had all this in sight. Before Fu Jingmo shook her off, she let go and went to the opposite side of Hua Wanrou to sit down. Brother Jingmo. She endured her stomach discomfort and repeated Hua Wanrou's name for Fu Jingmo. He lowered his eyes with a smile, and his index finger drew half a circle along the edge of the red wine glass. Miss Hua, you are 26, and you are almost 3, and you are still Brother Jingmo. Oh, I'm in a panic for you. Her voice was not light or heavy, with a little lazy carelessness, clearly falling into everyone's ears. Word by word. Directly poke the pain point of Hua Wanrou. The smile on Hua Wanrou's face stiffened, and her heart and liver trembled with anger. She wanted to reach out and strangle the woman who laughed at her. She waited for Fu Jingmo for more than 10 years. From a flower girl to an older leftover girl, she became a joker in the celebrity circle. Age is her taboo. Whether she remembers it herself or someone mentions it, it will embarrass her and make her furious. Well, let's have a drink and wish Lao Fu a happy birthday. Seeing that the atmosphere was not good, Yang Kanzan hurriedly picked up the wineglass to relieve the siege for the little Rose. Hua Wanrou, who was on the verge of breaking out, was awakened by this sentence, took a deep breath, and tried her best to pull out a generous and decent smile. Brother Jingmo and I have known each other since we were young. It's called getting used to it. It's good that Brother Jingmo likes it. Her eyes were slightly red and she looked at the indifferent Fu Jingmo. Looking forward to Fu Jingmo's nod, or However, Fu Jingmo lowered his eyes and pecked at the red wine from beginning to end, which was cold and chilling. Little Rose. Yang Kanzan leaned sideways to Nanxing and said in a low voice, how do you know that Wanrou is 26 years old? Nanxing cut and raised his eyes to stare at Chuchu's poor Hua Wanrou. He raised his voice and said in a high voice to look at the bags, wrinkles, look at the melasma. Cough. Yang Kanzan interrupted Nanxing with a rapid cough, and raised the wine glass again to relieve the embarrassment. Come on, let's have a drink. It's fate to get together. If you don't get drunk tonight, you won't come back. Nanxing gave Yang Kanzan a look worthy of the king of the sea. Under the expectation of Hua was soft and clear, he slowly picked up the wine glass in front of him and sent it to his red lips. Chapter 45 Hua Wanrou eats bad consequences for herself. Drink it. Drink it quickly. Hua Wanrou stared at Nanxing's movements, hoping that Nanxing could drink every drop of wine. This glass of red wine is mixed with a whole box of aphrodisiacs, which is so powerful that it can make the drinker die in the emptiness that can never be filled. Nanxing's moist red lips held the edge of the cup and sniffed the mellow taste of red wine. The wine is rich in fragrance, and it is a top-quality red wine when you smell it. Such a good wine can't be wasted. Ah! There are snakes. Hua Wanrou's frightened screams cut through the silent night sky. This voice made everyone panic over. Only Fu Jingmo and Nanxing sat in the chair as steady as Mount Tai, motionless, indifferently and very tacitly. Nanxing looked at Hua Wanrou's jumping embarrassment. Yang Kanzan and Qing hurriedly helped, and the corners of her red lips raised a tasteful smile. She did not shy away. In front of Fu Jingmo, she openly changed the wine glass in her hand with Hua Wanrou. Be good. Nanxing blinked at Fu Jingmo and asked Fu Jingmo not to dismantle the stage. Fu Jingmo's eyes were slightly deep, as if he understood something. The bright moonlight fell on him, which made his handsome facial features colder and colder, and his eyes looking at Nanxing were also more disgusted. TSK, deep love. Nanxing's relevant evaluation of Fu Jingmo's eyes, shy hands on his cheeks and giggled. Fu Jingmo withdrew his gaze and was too lazy to criticize the woman's cheekiness. He lowered his eyes, and his white and slender fingers held the red cup, gently shaking the red wine, and every frame was elegant and charming. Miss, don't be afraid. The snake has run away. Qing was also shocked. Snake, a soft creature, made her scalp tingle and her whole body got goosebumps when she thought of it. Hua Wen's soft white and tender little hand covered her chest, opened her mouth and gasped, almost scared her soul. Thinking that she would find out just a little later, the snake would climb up her calf, and the pores of her whole body were oozing cold. I even want to directly chop off the left foot that was crawled by the snake. This. How can there be snakes here? Hua Wen's soft voice was crying, and she leaned on Nanxing with tears in her eyes, as if she would die at any time. Nanxing pulled the corners of his lips coldly, and science said that this is in the mountains. It is normal to have snakes, and maybe there are snake demons. Hua Wen's face turned pale when she heard the words. Her petite body shivered, and her red water eyes fell on Fu Jingmo. Brother Jingmo, can I take a shower here? Snakes are so disgusting. Yes, of course. Yang Kanzan answered enthusiastically. I can't wait for something to happen to Hua Wen and Fu Jingmo. Fu Jingmo glanced coldly at Yang Kanzan, who was the master without permission, gently put down the goblet in his hand, and called Xu Tasuka. Take her to Li Ro's place and soak some calming herbs. The previous sentence made the nervous Hua Wen's heart like ashes, and the next sentence brought her back to life. The joy was so moved that she almost cried. Fu Jingmo finally cares about her. Thank you, brother Jingmo. Hua Wen said thank you shyly, and her mood changed dramatically in an instant. If she can get a word of concern from Fu Jingmo, she is worth it even if she is bitten by a snake. Hate, Miss Hua. Nanxing picked up the wine glass on the table and asked with a slight smile, do you still want to toast with me? Hua Wenro was so scared by the snake that she forgot about the aphrodisiac. She would not miss the opportunity to kill this bitch. Well, then let's have a drink. I wish brother Jingmo a bright future. She gently pushed Nanxing away, took soft steps, and walked to the dining table generously. Nanxing smiled slightly, turned his eyes to the cold Fu Jingmo, and raised the wine glass to him. Mobao, then I wish you that there is no lack of love and no lack of people in sex. Yang Kanzan and Xu Tasuka were so shocked that they coughed wildly at the same time. This woman is really a great artist and bold. Even her birthday wishes are so fresh and extraordinary. Nanxing took the initiative to touch the cup with Hua Wenro, who looked ugly, and raised his head to sip the red wine in the glass. Hua Wenro didn't want to lose to Nanxing in any aspect. Even if she was not strong, she stubbornly did it all in one bite. Chapter 46 Self-Eating Evil Consequences. Looking at Hua Wenro's seemingly delicate but actually proud back, a trace of cunning flashed in Nanxing's eyes. If it weren't for this matter for children, she would definitely teach according to her talent and let the little fan group see what is called self-eating evil consequences. Little Rose, let's have a drink, too. I haven't seen you for a day. I miss you so much. Lend me your mobile phone. Nanxing interrupted Yang Kanzan, who was confessing, and stretched out his hand to him. Yang Kanzan was flattered and wanted to be arrogant. What are you doing? Do you want to add me on WeChat? Add your sister, hurry up. Nanxing frowned and said anxiously. The higher the amount of aphrodisiac, the faster the attack will occur. Seeing that Xiao Rose was impatient, Yang Kanzan quickly took out her mobile phone, afraid that the next second, she would go to Fu Jingmo to borrow it. The password is. Yang Kanzan, the prodigal son of the love field, suddenly became a little shy. He swallowed his saliva nervously and dared not look at Nanxing's eyes. I love the abbreviation of Little Rose. Greasy. The corners of Nanxing's mouth twitched, ruthlessly took the mobile phone from Yang Kanzan's hand, and quickly followed Hua Wenro. Yang Kanzan had a small arrow in his chest and asked with no heart. Where is Greasy? Where are you going? Squat in the pit. The two concise words made Yang Kanzan take back the steps he took. Hua Wenro walked out of the courtyard, and the power of the cup of medicinal wine came up. Before her brain could react, she had already fallen on the grass. Qing was so scared when she saw this that she hurriedly bent down to help Hua Wenro. Miss, what's wrong with you? Didn't you fall? Get up quickly. When she saw Hua Wenro's sweaty face, Qing's heart suddenly clicked, and her face turned pale as if it had been struck by lightning. This is. They are the trick. Xiao, miss, please be sober. This is at Master Fu's house. Qing half knelt on the ground, her heart and liver trembled like a sieve. She held Hua Wenro's hand and lowered her voice to remind her. In just over a dozen seconds, Hua Wenro has completely changed her personality. Qing could hardly stop Hua Wenro. Xu Tasuka, who had been walking in front of him, turned around when he heard the sound, and found that he was hundreds of meters away from Hua Wanyanxing. Xu Tasuka, my lady has a foot. You can ask Dr. Li to prepare the medicine first, and we'll go there later. Qing tried to calm herself down. If she was known Hua Wenro was drugged, or Hua Wenro lost her virginity. When Hua Wenro wakes up tomorrow, she will undoubtedly die. Okay, then I'll go there first. Under the dim light and a long distance, Xu Tasuka didn't see anything wrong. He turned around and continued to go to Li Rong. Hua Wenro broke free from Qing and rolled on the ground with unbearable torment. Her pure white skirt was full of folds, which was completely two extremes like the lady celebrity she usually disguised. Oh, the medicine is quite strong. Nanxing stood on the lush fartong tree, sneered at the corners of his lips, and held his mobile phone steadily in one hand to shoot a video. Anqing was so scared that she didn't know what to do at all. She can't get Hua Waro away by herself, so she can only call the bodyguard to help. Two tall and burly bodyguards rushed over. When they saw Hua Waro's state, they also broke out in a cold sweat. They looked at each other, but none of them dared to come forward. Everyone in the Hua family knows Hua Waro's feelings for Fu Jingmo. Moreover, Hua Wan is flexible and tricky. Whoever comes forward at this time, in case he is entangled and can't get out, Hua Waro will definitely blow up someone's ancestral grave. Chapter 47. Admit the first coward, kneel down and admit your mistake. Come up, you guys are up. A sweet voice of contempt sounded suddenly, which made the bodyguards looking back and looked up in a panic. But it was so dark all around that no one could be seen. Nanxing sneered coldly, pressed the pause button for shooting, and jumped from the sycamore tree more than 10 meters high. She originally wanted to record a video and leave quietly, but these two bodyguards were too cowardly to blind such a big man for nothing. Why, if it were your lady, wouldn't you dare? Nanxing put his hands around his chest, and his cold and proud eyes glared at the defensive bodyguard. Perhaps she was so rampant and aggressive that the bodyguard couldn't help but retreat. Bitch! It was you who framed and designed our lady? Anqing, who was in a mess, wanted to take a bite back. Nanxing laughed and slowly swept his back teeth with the tip of his tongue. Who got the medicine? You. Anqing was so choked that she couldn't speak. She couldn't figure out why she was turned against by this bitch. Nanxing slowly approached Hua Waro, who was wriggling like a water snake. Most of the skirt on her body had been peeled off, and there were several blood stains of nail scratches on her fair neck. It's unbearable to see the wandering like a skeleton. The medicine is too fierce, and Hua Waro is like the mud in a pool of volcanic molten slurry. It must be very uncomfortable, Miss Hua. Nanxing looked down at Hua Waro under his feet, and his red lips hooked as if there was nothing. If you stay in a line when you harm others, you won't feel so uncomfortable. At least a man can save you, but now... She raised her eyes and looked at the bodyguard who was inexplicably shocked by her, with a beautiful and cold smile. Are you together? Or come one by one? Or, do I follow you? The bodyguards looked at each other, and they were all refreshed by the weak and innocent but violent woman in front of them. At first glance, this woman is a family trainer, not to mention the kung fu. Just fighting on Fu Jingmo's territory and smashing the birthday banquet, it is not enough for them to send the heads of a family. We are also hired by people and obey people's orders. Miss, she offended you, but she was also punished. Please raise your hand and let us take the lady away. One of the bodyguards calmed his mind and asked Nanxing to let them go. Once the matter broke out, they would have to peel a layer of skin. Well, the reason is beautiful enough, which makes people cry, but it's a pity. Nanxing instantly restrained his smile, and his eyes were as sharp as a blade. I'm not the Virgin Mary. Give you 1 minute to make a choice. If you don't go, I'll ask Fu Jingmo to come and see your lady's DIY. Patong patong, the two bodyguards knelt down in unannounced, which made Nanxing's mouth twitch slightly. Is it worthy of your rough appearance and tendons? I'm sorry, please let us go. Nanxing has been in the world for many years, and he has never seen such a cowardly strong man, King Kong Barbie. She turned her eyes to look at Anqing and wanted to complain about where she was looking for this bitch. Unexpectedly, Anqing, who was arrogant and domineering, trembled and knelt on the ground. The aura was completely extinguished, and he cried bitterly and begged for mercy. I'm sorry, please let us go. I dare not hurt you again. Nanxing's face is full of black lines. If you want to be cowardly together, you should have a team spirit. It's useless to kneel down. I'm not a bodhisattva. Kneel down to make your heart come back. Nanxing is not soft-hearted at all. If she drank this glass of wine, who would feel sorry for her? Chapter 48. Mo Bao is jealous again and again. Just as Nanxing was about to count down for 20 seconds and urged King Kong Barbie to take off his clothes. Bang! 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 3 cowards kowtowed. Damn it, you! Nanxing was amused by them and scratched his hair irritably. With this little courage, why do you come out to play with drug storks? I'm really impressed by you. Nanxing Shen waved his hand in annoyance and looked at the dying Hua Waro on the ground, and the fire in his chest subsided a little. Okay, I can let you go, but you have to cooperate with me. It's boring to play with a group of cowards. It's better to flirt with Fu Jingmo. Okay, we will cooperate, absolutely cooperate. King Kong Barbie and Anqing are very grateful. Nanxing raised his thin eyebrows, took out his mobile phone again, and raised an obscene smile with bad taste at the corners of his lips. Come on, let's take a few poses and take a seat. Well, I said number 1 Barbie, you move. Although it's fake, it has to be decent. Number 2 Barbie, you go down a little more, you block the heroine's enchanting face. Shooting enough material, Nanxing comforted the frightened King Kong Barbie and Anqing. As long as you are good at human beings in the future, this video will not spread. King Kong Barbie, who was caught by the handle, could only bow his head and resign quickly and leave City A to save his life. Anqing cried with a runny nose and tears. She confessed defeat and softened in her mouth, but her heart was full of hatred, cursing this bad bitch to die. Shu Tasuka asked Li Rong to prepare the bath water and come back to find people. Only Nanxing was left in the huge backyard. Looking at her from afar, Shu Tasuka's ears were red. As soon as Nanxing sent the video to the pickled cabbage to clean up the traces on the mobile phone, he heard footsteps approaching. She suddenly turned around and bumped into Shu Tasuka's fearful and shy eyes. Hua Wanro was a little itchy. She went back to stop the itching. Without waiting for Shu Tasuka to ask, she first told Hua Wan to leave gently and peacefully. Itchy. Doubts flashed in Shu Tasuka's eyes. Didn't Hua Wanro sting her feet? Well, itchy. Nanxing nodded seriously. Seeing that Shu Tasuka's ears were red, she smiled and said, "Don't think crookedly." She was angry. Shu Tasuka. He no think about it. Crooked. Nanxing shook off Shu Tasuka, who blushed like a crayfish, raised his hand and stroked the diamond earrings, with bright and unruly eyes. Please save the video for me. Dogs can't change it and eat shit. She doesn't think that Hua Wan will protect herself in the future. The video is in hand, and no many have tens of millions of conspiracies, and they can only kneel down and call Sister Jing. When he returned to the courtyard of the main hall, young Kanzan had been drunk by Fu Jingmo's routine. He was holding half a bottle of red wine in one hand, pointing to Fu Jingmo and shouting, stagging and stunned steadily. Let me tell you, it's me that Little Rose likes me, she borrowed my mobile phone, ha 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 ha. Little Rose borrowed my mobile phone, and I finally won you. Young Kanzan's tongue was big and showed off vaguely. Compared with the cold and reserved Fu Jingmo, she is a mentally retarded child. Nanxing's eyes were full of disgust and reached out and poked young Kanzan's spine. Hey, young Yochi, I'll give you back my mobile phone. Young Kanzan turned around and hugged Nanxing with the influence of wine. Fortunately, Nanxing dodged quickly and dexterously. He staggered a few steps and hugged the pillar next to him. Touch, kiss, and gnaw. Well, Little Rose, I really like you so much. Your face is so slippery. Trojan horse, Trojan horse. It smells so good. Nanxing listened to the sound of young Kanzan sucking the pillar, and his scalp was numb. She turned her eyes to look at Fu Jingmo. Her face didn't seem to be very good. Are you jealous again? Chapter 49. Nanxing defeated Master Fu. Mobao, are you angry that someone didn't borrow your mobile phone? Mobao, he borrowed Yang Sansan's because he was afraid of dirtying your mobile phone. Mobao, don't go. Wait for me and listen to my explanation. Nanxing drove Fu Jingmo back to the living room step by step. In the luxuriously arranged courtyard full of champagne towers, only young Kanzan, who was holding a pillar and playing hooligans, was left in an instant. Mobao, you haven't cut the birthday cake yet. Mobao, I haven't given you a birthday present yet. Mobao, take care of others. Their legs are about to be broken to Mobao. Get out. Fu Jingmo's steps paused, and his cold eyes swept to the little woman chirping beside him. Nanxing curled his lips, and his pink little face was full of grievances. He lowered his head and muttered, "Do you know how hurtful the word roll is? You can let people get out of here at any time. You are all in their hearts. How can you go?" She raised her eyes, and her tearful eyes were slightly red, which inexplicably made Fu Jingmo's chest tighten. Mobile. Nanxing pulled the cuff of Fu Jingmo's suit and shook it gently, with a hint of choking in his voice. "I want to hug you, can I?" She has always been reckless and lawless, and does whatever she wants. But suddenly I asked his opinion with tears in my eyes, which made Fu Jingmo unable to understand. Seeing that Fu Jingmo was looking at her carefully and relaxed his guard against her, Nanxing seized the opportunity and raised his hand holding his cuff, and the white delicate powder spread from her fingertips. Fu Jingmo, who was defenseless, inhaled the powder, and a strong dizziness struck. He held his forehead with one hand and shook his head, and his clear vision quickly blurred. His feet were soft, and his tall body fell on the woman's shoulder. Nanxing hugged Fu Jingmo's waist, and an evil smile bloomed on her delicate little face. "Good boy, my ancestors are going to give you a birthday present." She went upstairs with Fu Jingmo, who was dizzy and weak but conscious. Although Fu Jingmo was very tall, it was not hard for Nanxing, who practiced martial arts all year round. She chose 3 kinds of medicinal materials from lirong, shou vine, acacia peel and cypress kernels. These 3 medicinal materials have the effect of calming down, but mixing them together can cause mild poisoning. "Good boy, cooperate with your ancestors obediently, and I won't hurt you later." Nanxing smiled and muttered softly, and rubbed Fu Jingmo's lateral waist muscles like a female hooligan. "Cool." Fu Jingmo's handsome face was buried in Nanxing's neck, and his nose was full of the fragrance of a woman. His white and slender fingertips hanging on his side trembled. As soon as he stepped on the second floor with Fu Jingmo, Nanxing noticed a cold murderous spirit. If I guess correctly, it should be Fu Jingmo's 24-hour bodyguard. The master with skills, speed and agility convinced her. "Let go of Master Fu." The man's thick and calm voice sounded. Nanxing went straight and only saw a tall and strong man in black. Wearing a half-black mask on his face, standing straight in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. The appearance can't be seen clearly, and the murderous eagle eyes make people tremble. He was drunk, and I sent him back to his room. Nanxing smiled gently, and the dimples on his small face were sweet and harmless. No, you can send it here. Thunder Eagle raised his feet and walked quickly towards this side. Nanxing frowned and slapped his mouth fiercely. TSK, why can you, such a powerful man, understand the hints between adults? What is wine? It's helpful. On Mobao's birthday, he drank again. I sent him back to his room and rolled the sheets by the way. Can you do it for him? Chapter 50 Nanxing Yao poured Master Fu. 2. Lei Ying almost staggered under his feet and looked at the woman with sharp teeth and mouth in front of him with cold eyes. The woman's identity is mysterious. He used all means, but he couldn't even find her name. What's more, Master Fu usually doesn't like women, and he hates this woman. He will never sleep with this woman. Master Fu is drunk and unconscious. I can't give him to you. Oh, Nanxing sneered and looked at Lei Ying's cold and arrogant eyes. It's really interesting. Your Master Fu is not on guard against me. Do you guard against me? Master Fu. If he defends me, will he get drunk with me? Nanxing interrupted Lei Ying and asked back again. Thunder Eagle was speechless for a moment. Or do you think I, a prisoner, can defeat your Master Fu? Do you think your master's brain and kung fu are not as good as my woman? Nanxing's words were sharp, and every sentence was a pit. Seeing that Lei Ying was choked and speechless, she used a killer. Is this the first time you have seen me close to my family? Lei Ying's eyes flashed. He did see Master Fu make exceptions for this woman many times. I acquiesced to this woman's entanglement again and again. Don't you get out of the way? Nanxing was impatient and picked up his thin eyebrows playfully. Why don't the three of us play together? You. Lei Ying clenched his fist, and his eyes were full of murderous intent, but his feet took a step back. The woman persuaded him. He has been with Fu Jingmo for decades, and he knows Fu Jingmo's temper and city government best. He can get drunk in front of this woman, which is enough to show that he allows the woman to lie on her side. Nanxing gave Lei Ying a white look and hugged Fu Jingmo back to the room. The moment she locked the door, she suddenly let go of her hand and pushed Fu Jingmo to the floor. The tall body made a muffled sound. Nanxing was very pleasant to hear. Before his red lips could rise, he suddenly remembered something and hurriedly jumped on Fu Jingmo's waist. Fu Jingmo raised his head and closed his eyes, and his throat rolled down. There was a painful and muffled hum, and Momei frowned into a dead knot. Nanxing could clearly feel that Fu Jingmo's abdominal muscles were clearly stiff and tight with her breathing, and she couldn't help swallowing saliva. Xiaoxiang, the figure is quite attractive. A dark shadow flashed on the curtain, and the Thunder Eagle, who heard the sound of falling to the ground, peeped uneasy. He gently pushed open the window, and his slender fingers lifted a curtain. The scene he saw made his ears red in an instant. In just 2 seconds, he hurriedly put down the curtains and leaned against the wall to gasp. Did Master Fu really have a heart for this woman? On the cold floor of the room, Nanxing kissed Fu Jingmo's crimson thin lips a second before Lei Ying lifted the curtains. Fu Jingmo put one hand around Nanxing's waist and held her cheek with the other hand. Although she was below, she was the initiator of mastering the rhythm scale. Kissing Fu Jingmo was originally in Nanxing's revenge plan, but it was implemented in advance. Therefore, the moment when the lips were close to each other, Nanxing's heart was extremely happy. Fu Go, you are quite sweet. She whispered in Fu Jingmo's ear with bad taste, and her tone was full of provocation. I don't know whether her lips are hot or Fu Jingmo's earlobe is hot, and the air is much drier. Fu Jingmo was conscious and clear, but he was unable to push away the woman who was reckless on his body. The half-closed black pupils surged with dark fire, and the blue veins on his big hands with distinct joints emerged. He heard the woman say, Fu Go, let's get straight to the point, you breathe better, I'm a voice control.